Hello everyone, if you're new to my channel, consider liking and subscribing. It will make me feel wonderful if you do that. Thanks. By the way, I also have another Naruto and Luffy fanfiction channel. If you are interested, link is in the description.
One Piece Talent Copy System by dragonnx. In the vast and perilous world of One Piece, with a seas teeming with pirates, marines, and untold mysteries, a young man is given a second chance at life. Reincarnated into this fantastical universe, he discovers he possesses a unique and powerful copy talent system, an ability that allows him to copy the talents and skills of others, including Double Fruits. Member list: Taz Peterson, Yanko, Leilani Morris, Warlord, Garrick Russell, Warlord, Black Money Young Lion, Warlord, KSGPL 4YZ, Warlord, Adio.
Chapter 126. Driven by a desperate need to find the elusive Noir, Sengoku had been relentlessly scouring the New World, leaving chaos and unrest in his wake. But Sengoku hadn't anticipated that the eccentric Noir had no intention of venturing into the New World at all. After all, Noir already had a base of operations in the first half of the Grand Line. The New World was a complex and dangerous place, with established powers far more formidable than those found in Paradise. Noir chose to backtrack, bypassing Sabaody and heading back to the Florian Triangle. The familiar purple fog shrouded the area in an eerie darkness, instilling fear in those on board. Some of the children, unnerved by the gloomy surroundings, huddled in corners, their silent sobs echoing through the ship. However, Noir's presence and the crew's overall kindness soon calmed their anxieties. After nearly a day at sea, the Shadow Fruit's connection to the zombies grew stronger. Suddenly, Puff rushed to Noir's side. "Savior, there's a light ahead." Realization dawned on Noir. "Go tell everyone, we've reached safety." Puff visibly relaxed, nodding before hurrying off to spread the news. Noir, brimming with anticipation, climbed to the crow's nest, his gaze fixed on the dark horizon. A flicker of orange-red flames with a white-hot core illuminated a large section of the sea. Taking a deep breath, he shouted, "Ace, come pick us up." The flames wavered for a moment, then surged forward like an excited husky, heading straight towards them. Noir. The Spade Pirates' ship approached, Ace standing at the helm, his arms ablaze, transformed into a human flamethrower. He roared with excitement. The Spade's path through the gloomy fog was marked by a blazing trail of fire. Deuce and Miharl, along with the rest of the crew, clung to the ship for dear life, nearly getting thrown overboard. The Spade pulled alongside Noir's ship. Ace leapt across the gap, engulfing Noir in a bear hug. Like a long-lost friend, Ace clapped Noir on the back, a wide grin on his face. "You were gone for ages. What exciting things did you get up to?" Noir gently disentangled himself from the enthusiastic hug, gesturing towards the people behind him. "Plenty of exciting things, but we'll talk about it later. Let me introduce you. These are all friends of mine." Warmth filled the hearts of the freed slaves. Their savior had chosen not to mention their past as slaves and had introduced them as friends. Many of those who had lost their homes resolved to follow Noir, devoting their lives to repaying his kindness. Ace turned to look at the newcomers, who shyly returned his greeting. Ace doffed his hat and bowed slightly, his demeanor polite and respectful. "It's a pleasure to meet you. I'm a friend of Noir's. Thank you for taking care of him." The crowd waved their hands, flustered. "It was our honor." Ace's personality was multifaceted. Ever since he believed Sabo to be dead, another side of him had emerged. When facing equals or those he genuinely liked, Ace was a rebellious and mischievous young man, a carefree spirit. This was likely his true nature, his default state. However, when dealing with loved ones or acquaintances, Ace was incredibly polite, especially towards his brother's friends. This aspect of his personality stemmed from his desire to fill the void left by Sabo's supposed death, adopting some of Sabo's noble etiquette. This explained why the Ace Noir knew was different from the heartwarming big brother Ace portrayed in the original story. Noir had often wondered if this Ace was the real deal. Ace helped transport several people onto his ship, then beckoned Noir. "Let's head back to your interesting ship. A lot has happened while you were gone." Noir raised an eyebrow. "What happened?" Ace scratched his head, a troubled expression on his face. "Your wolf-like companion said that two people ran away. Something like Puro." Noir's heart skipped a beat. Perona and Hogback ran away? What were Jabra and Kaku doing? They were former CP9 agents, couldn't they keep an eye on one little girl? Noir, reunited with Ace, navigated towards Thriller Bark through the thick fog, soon reaching the massive ship's gaping mouth. As the crowd watched in awe and wonder, the ship sailed through the opening, docking on the shoreline within Thriller Bark. Noir jumped ashore, beckoning the others with a smile. "Come on down. This is my territory. The Marines won't think to look for us here." Reassured by their savior's words, the crowd disembarked, their eyes wide with curiosity as they took in their surroundings. Though Thriller Bark's environment was somewhat unsettling, compared to Mary Joie's, it was paradise. Noir led the group towards the castle. As the structure came into view, they saw flickering lights and a peculiar group of creatures ahead. The crowd instinctively reached for their weapons. "Don't worry," Noir assured them. "Those are the results of devil fruits. They're my subordinates." A gentle voice called out from the approaching group. "Captain, we've brought food and water." Noir recognized Robin, who was accompanied by Conus. Conus set down the supplies, instructing the oddly shaped zombies to distribute them amongst the crowd. Initially, people were uneasy around the zombies, but soon their hunger took over and they focused on eating. After all, they hadn't had a proper meal in what felt like forever. Seeing their ravenous appetites, Noir let out a relieved sigh. Suddenly, a warm hand slipped into his. He looked down to see Robin, her clear eyes filled with an unreadable emotion, as deep and mysterious as the ocean. Her expression remained neutral as she held his hand, her voice soft and calm. "You look tired." Noir touched his face, unsure. "Do I?" Robin's beautiful face seemed strangely cold. Her gaze, unwavering and intense, made Noir feel uneasy. He hesitated, a strange sense of guilt washing over him. "I had to save them. Things got a little out of hand. They've been through so much." Robin sighed, turning away without a word. Noir scratched his head, unsure what to say. Women's hearts are a mystery. Is she angry? But why? As he pondered, a soft, almost mournful voice reached his ears. "If you were gone, what would be left in this world? You're all I have." Noir was startled. He looked at Robin, his heart sinking. Her gaze was downcast, and he noticed the exhaustion etched on her delicate features. For a fleeting moment, he saw the distant, guarded girl he'd first met in Alabasta. Seeing Robin's expression, he finally understood her feelings. Even though their crew had grown, their bonds deepening, Robin was still the same Robin, the girl who had retreated into the shadows after the horrors of Ohara. She truly relied on only him, and now Noir. But during the heavenly tribute heist, Noir had put himself in danger, diving deep into the heart of marine security. Then he'd caused chaos and set fire to Mary Joieuse, recklessly venturing into the most dangerous place in the world. When news of his serious injuries reached Robin, she'd been left alone, praying for his safety. Putting himself in her shoes, Noir realized he would have reacted the same way if Nami or Najiko had done something similar. He was confident in his abilities, and Robin was confident in him as well, but worry didn't always follow logic. Noir gently squeezed her hand, meeting her gaze with unwavering determination. "I'm sorry I worried you. I promise, I'll never leave you again." Such a stereotypical apology. Conus, watching from a distance, munching on sunflower seeds, silently mocked them. As Robin was about to respond, a loud roar erupted from behind them. She quickly pulled her hand away from Noir's grasp. "Noir, come to the castle. The zombies are so much fun." Noir's veins bulged. He spun around and launched a lightning-fast double kick, sending Ace flying. The fire-lighting youth transformed into a shooting star, disappearing into the night sky. Chapter 127. Inside the brightly lit castle, a long, grand table stretched across the hall, surrounded by smaller tables of various sizes. Noir sat at the head of the main table, a triumphant gleam in his eyes as he raised his glass. "From this day forward, we live only for ourselves. Cheers." Noir's crew, Ace's crew, and the people rescued from Mary Joieuse raised their glasses in unison, their voices echoing with joy. Cheers. They emptied their glasses in one hearty gulp, then turned their attention to the feast laid out before them. In the kitchen, children and women bustled about, bringing dish after dish to the tables, assisted by a group of clumsy zombies whose antics elicited exasperated sighs from the chefs. At the tables, the guests laughed and chatted, sharing stories and enjoying each other's company. Ace's crew members amused themselves by teasing the zombies, roaring with laughter as the undead servants accidentally dropped food on their heads. The people rescued from Mary Joieuse enthusiastically shared their meals, urging the busy kitchen staff to join them at the table. Enel and Wiper, as usual, were locked in a heated competition, this time over a platter of giant sea king meat. They rolled up their sleeves, ready to settle the dispute with a brawl. Kaku, Jabra, and Bluno watched the commotion with amusement, clapping and cheering from the sidelines. Lucci, ever the stoic, gracefully ate his steak, casting disdainful glances at the boisterous crowd. His peace was shattered when Wiper, in a fit of excitement, flung a plate of salad, splattering it across Lucci's face. The former CP9 agents groaned. "Here we go again." Even Lucci, covered in food, lost his composure. He transformed into his leopard form, roaring as he leapt into the fray, exchanging blows with the two gluttons. Meanwhile, a group of girls, including Conus and Khalifa, their eyes sparkling with excitement, gathered around Robin, whispering and giggling amongst themselves. Amidst the cheerful chaos, Noir and Ace stood side by side, arms crossed, glasses clinking as they chatted. Certain topics always seemed to dominate men's conversations. Noir, a thoughtful look on his face, asked, "So, there's a marine girl named Asuka who's been chasing after you." Ace waved his hand dismissively, a hint of annoyance in his voice. Chasing is the right word. She can't beat us, but she's persistent. Ace turned to see Noir looking at him with a mischievous glint in his eyes. Ace, exasperated, ignored him. Noir, assuming an air of wisdom, leaned closer and whispered, "So, do you like her?" Ace's face flushed, and he jumped onto the table. "Of course not, I'm a free-spirited pirate." Noir, channeling his inner strategist, offered some sage advice. "Love knows no boundaries. As a man, you have to be brave, seize the opportunity, and don't leave any regrets." Ace gave him a skeptical look. "So, you're saying you're brave, huh?" Noir nodded confidently, only for Ace to point towards Robin, who was sitting nearby, a playful smirk on his face. Silence spoke volumes. Noir scratched his head awkwardly. "Well, that's a bit different." Ace burst into laughter, finally steering the conversation towards more serious matters. "Sabo and the others have taken care of our share of the heavenly tribute. It's all waiting for you." Noir's eyes lit up. After the heavenly tribute heist, he made a detour to Mary Joie's, leaving his share of the loot in Ace's care. Ace had proven to be reliable, storing a vast amount of gold and resources within the castle. Noir wasn't too concerned about the exact amount. He had his crew to handle that. Ace patted his head, pulling a den den mushi from his pocket. "Sabo wanted you to have this. He said if we ever need to work together again, you can just call him directly." Noir accepted the den den mushi, a smile spreading across his face. "Got it." As the night wore on, Thriller Bark grew quiet. Even the tireless zombies had retreated to their graveyard. The banquet hall was littered with sleeping bodies, everyone lost in peaceful slumber, their snores filling the air. Enel, Wiper, and Lucci lay on the floor, bruised and battered, either asleep or unconscious. Ace, snoring softly, was using Noir's foot as a pillow, while Noir, his head resting on Robin's lap, dreamt sweet dreams. Robin, her beautiful eyes gazing down at the sleeping Noir, gently stroked his black hair and caressed his cheek. A smile touched her lips as she, too, drifted off to sleep. It was a rare moment of tranquility. Noir hadn't slept so soundly in a long time. Thriller Bark, on this night, was anything but terrifying. On the edge of the Florian Triangle, a small boat bobbed on the waves. A young woman directed a plump man as he rowed. It was Perona and Hogback, who, after days of wandering, had finally found a way out of the haunted waters. Hogback rowed with all his might as Perona urged him on, her voice filled with urgency. "Faster, Hogback, we're almost out of here." Her face contorted with hatred, she gritted her teeth. "That devil killed Moria-sama. We have to find a way to avenge him." Hogback, struggling with the oars, hesitated. But even Moria-sama was no match for him. "What chance do we have?" Perona snapped. "I know that, you don't have to tell me." As they argued, the sound of water splashing reached their ears. Perona tensed up. Could it be the devil's subordinates, chasing after us? Hogback raised his hands, trembling. Perona summoned her ghosts, preparing for battle. Through the dense fog, a black cross-shaped silhouette appeared. The man who used a black blade as an oar, accompanied by his iconic theme music, made another dramatic entrance. His golden eyes coldly assessed Perona and Hogback. "Who are you?" Hogback, staring at the distinctive black blade, pointed a shaking finger. Dracul Mahawk, the world's greatest swordsman." Moria had told them that among the Shichibukai, in terms of sheer destructive power, this man was unrivaled. Perona whispered to Hogback, "We just escaped from the devil, and now we run into this monster." Mahawk, his sharp ears catching their words, tilted his head. "You know Noir?" Perona and Hogback were stunned, then quickly realized their opportunity. A devious plan formed in Perona's mind. She spoke urgently. "Yes, Mahawk. That devil is on Moria-sama's ship, bragging about how he's going to defeat you." Mahawk stared at her impassively. "On Moria's ship, challenging him? Such a poor liar. Does she think I'm a fool?" Early one morning, a distinguished guest arrived at Thriller Bark. Noir, still groggy from sleep, walked out of his room. His eyes widened as he recognized the man standing before him. "Hawkeye, what brings you here?" Noir exclaimed in delight. The hawk resisted the urge to draw his sword. "I was passing through. I heard you were here, so I decided to pay you a visit." Mahawk's golden eyes swept over the people surrounding Noir. Apart from Robin, whom he had met before, the rest were unfamiliar faces. "It seems you've built up your own forces." Noir smiled proudly. He had met Hawkeye before reaching Skypia, back when he only had Robin by his side. Mahawk suddenly pointed behind him. "I encountered two individuals on my way here. They said they escaped from your custody." Noir turned and chuckled. It was Perona and Hogback. According to Jabber's report, their escape had been due to his own playful negligence. After all, Noir had only ordered them to be confined, and Jabra and the others hadn't been overly strict. But he hadn't expected them to be caught by Mihawk. Perona spat at them. "You're all birds of a feather, a bunch of villains." Hogback quickly pulled her back, preventing her from acting rashly. Noir alone was a formidable opponent, let alone with Hawkeye by his side. Noir looked at her with a smile. "Are you seeking revenge for Moria? Do you think you're capable of that?" Perona glared at him, her eyes red-rimmed, but she remained silent. The gap in their strength was insurmountable. Unlike the power-hungry supernovas, Perona could never hope to catch up to Noir. Mihawk, sensing something, frowned. "You killed Moria?" Noir nodded. "Yes. His territory is vacant now." Mihawk nodded thoughtfully. "That explains it. I heard the Marines are looking for a new warlord." Noir's interest was piqued. "They found a replacement so quickly? Who is it?" Mihawk's voice was calm. "There are two candidates. One is Fire Fist Ace and the other." He looked at Noir, who exclaimed in surprise, "Me?" Mihawk chuckled softly. "That seems unlikely now, considering the Heavenly Tribute heist. That was you and Fire Fist, wasn't it?" Noir was taken aback. "You know about that?" "It's no secret," Mihawk replied. "You two pulled off quite a feat. I doubt they'll be considering you now." Noir smirked. "Not necessarily. I accomplished something else, something that might force them to reconsider." Hawkeye looked at him curiously but didn't say a word. Noir, surprised, asked, "You haven't heard about what happened in Mary Joieuse?" Mihawk shook his head. "What happened?" "The burning of Mary Joieuse was a major event. How could it be kept secret?" "It was impossible. Even if the freed slaves, unlike during Fisher Tiger's raid, hadn't been taken away, there had been countless witnesses that day." Noir briefly recounted his actions in Mary Joieuse. Mihawk listened intently, then spoke calmly. "It's not surprising that the government is covering it up. Another incident at Mary Joieuse would make them appear vulnerable. Even the World Economic News wouldn't dare publish such a story. But when your bounty goes up, the news will inevitably spread throughout the Grand Line. Sabaody Archipelago is teeming with all sorts of people. Even the government can't completely control the flow of information." Noir scratched his head. "I thought this would make me famous." Mihawk and Noir entered the castle. Hawkeye's eyes immediately fell upon the wine cabinet. He casually grabbed 2 bottles of wine and said, "You're already famous enough. At least among the warlords. Besides myself, who prefers solitude, the others must have heard about your exploits." The people who had awakened from their nightmares had tidied up the castle and prepared a feast to welcome Mihawk. Mihawk gracefully raised his glass, taking a few sips of wine. Noir stared at him, a bewildered expression on his face. Drinking wine this early in the morning felt strange. Mihawk looked at Noir. "So, you plan to make this your base?" Noir shook his head, his brow furrowed. "It's just a temporary base. I want to find an island in the New World to establish my territory." Mihawk glanced at him. "It seems you already have a target in mind." Noir nodded. "I'm looking for a place called the Kingdom of Noitum." Mihawk's eyes widened. "The great nation of the D-clan, Noitum?" Noir was stunned. "You know about it?" Mihawk seemed lost in thought. "I came across some information about Noitum during my travels, while honing my swordsmanship." Noir's heart leapt with joy. Hawkeye was a treasure trove of information. The last time they met, Mihawk had given him a permanent pointer to Skypia. Now, he had brought him even better news. Noir eagerly asked, "What did you find?" Mihawk shook his head. It was a stone tablet with inscriptions, detailing some of Noitum's history. It said that the Kingdom of Noitum was founded by the D-clan. The most unique aspect of this kingdom was that they raised dragon-like creatures. Every noble of Noitum, upon reaching adulthood, would undergo a ceremony to choose a dragon companion, a bond that would last a lifetime and could never be broken. For this reason, Noitum was also known as the Ancient Dragon Kingdom, and it was a powerful nation. Noir frowned. If Noitum was so strong, how did it fall? Mihawk chuckled coldly. "I don't know, but only the world government could have accomplished such a feat." Noir sighed in disappointment. "Do you know where Noitum is located?" Mihawk narrowed his eyes. "I don't, but someone might." "Someone? Who?" Noir looked at him questioningly. Mihawk continued, "When I discovered the stone tablet, I also wanted to find Noitum. But I was constantly thwarted by a group of people. I believe they were survivors of Noitum, a remnant organization of some sort." Noir grimaced. This was like being told nothing at all. Finding people was far more difficult than finding a location. The Grand Line was vast. Where could he possibly find a group of survivors from over 20 years ago? It's not like they would come looking for him. Unbeknownst to Noir, he had unknowingly spoken the truth. Out on the vast Grand Line, the Marines were frantically searching for him. His wanted posters were plastered everywhere. In a hidden corner of the world, a burly man held one of the posters in his hand, a joyful expression spreading across his face. "After all this time, since Water 7, we've finally found His Highness." "The Marines want to harm His Highness? Over our dead bodies?" Mahawk was taken to the ancient castle and treated with hospitality. The Spade pirates were stunned when they heard their guest was a warlord of the sea. Ace, intrigued, tried to strike up a conversation with Mahawk, much to the hawk-eyed swordsman's annoyance. He'd known another person just as boisterous. A peaceful new day dawned, and Noir began to consider the future of his ever-growing crew. Nearly 2,000 people crammed into the massive castle. The most pressing issue was food. Noir constantly sent people out to fish, relying on seafood to sustain them. The two giant warriors from Elbath, Nilf and Manlif, stayed on the ship, helping with construction projects. Noir watched them work with interest, his gaze falling on a mark below Nilf's neck. A crimson hoof print, the mark of the Tenryubito. All slaves of the celestial dragons were branded with this mark, and it was incredibly difficult to erase. Even the slaves Fisher Tiger had freed had merely covered the mark with another tattoo, concealing it rather than removing it. Noir scratched his head in frustration. Would he have to find a way to cover their marks too? But that would still leave a trace. He wanted these marks to vanish, not be hidden. Suddenly, an idea struck him. He actually had a skill that might help. He'd obtained a special skill from Chopper, a healing ability called Restoration. However, after a few experiments, he rarely used it. He'd discovered that Restoration wasn't truly healing, it only had a minor effect on external injuries. It was essentially a fancy, high-end cosmetic procedure. Noir beckoned to Nilf. "Hey, big guy, come here for a second." The giant lumbered over, his voice booming. "What is it, savior?" Noir leapt onto Nilf's shoulder, his feet barely touching the ground. "Relax, I want to try something." Nilf stood still, obediently. Noir focused on the giant's neck and activated Restoration. A faint, green glow, imbued with the essence of nature, enveloped the mark. The crimson of the hoof print gradually faded. Nilf, unable to see what was happening, exclaimed, "Savior, my neck feels warm." Noir smiled, satisfied. The other former slaves from Mary Joie stared in disbelief. The Tenryubito hoof print, so notoriously difficult to remove, was being effortlessly erased by their savior? Seeing that no trace of the mark remained on Nilf's neck, Noir jumped down and announced to the crowd, "Everyone, gather around, I'll erase your marks." A cheer erupted as the former slaves crowded around him, eager to be rid of the mark of their enslavement. They had resigned themselves to carrying this mark for life, even after escaping Mary Joie's. They had prepared themselves to bear this burden of darkness forever. And yet, their all-powerful savior had accomplished the impossible. Was there anything he couldn't do? As one by one, their marks vanished, their faces lit up with joy, running around with newfound lightness in their steps. The weight that had burdened their hearts lifted. They were truly free now, and they had found a leader to whom they would pledge their loyalty for life. By nightfall, Noir had erased the hoofprint from every single person, working tirelessly throughout the day. After dinner, he looked at his brothers and sisters, their faces free from the shadow of their past, and a genuine smile spread across his face. Mahawk, sitting opposite him, commented, "You care about your crew quite a bit." Noir stretched, leaning back on the sofa. "The more you invest in your crew, the more they'll be willing to give back. It's worth the effort." Mahawk scoffed. "That's why I prefer not to have a crew." Beside Mahawk, Ace idly spun his hat on his finger before asking, "So, Noir, are you really going to be a pirate now?" Noir shrugged, a wry smile on his lips. "The government and the Marines have already labeled me a pirate. Public opinion is in their hands. It's pointless for me to argue. I used to be a bounty hunter for convenience, but now, I don't really care about those trivial matters." Ace slammed his hand on the table, his face lighting up. "Then join my crew, be my nakama." Noir declined without hesitation. "Nope." Ace's shoulders slumped. "Why not?" "Because I don't want to join the Whitebeard pirates." Whitebeard could give Ace the fatherly love he craved, Noir. He wanted to offer that same love, but he couldn't. Speaking of which, Garp treating Ace like his grandson, he's really taking advantage of both Whitebeard and Roger. Ace, oblivious to Noir's wandering thoughts, continued, "Well, you have your own crew now. What's your pirate crew's name?" Noir blinked. "I haven't decided yet." Ace's expression froze. "And you haven't designed your Jolly Roger either?" Noir chuckled sheepishly. "Nope." Ace stared at him as if he were a strange creature. "How can you be a pirate without those things?" "The Jolly Roger is the soul and guiding spirit of a pirate crew. The crew's name is a badge of honor. These things are not to be taken lightly." Seeing Ace's sudden seriousness, Noir realized he needed to address this issue soon. He wasn't like Ace, he hadn't chosen to be a pirate. The world government had branded him as one, and his protests were futile. But Noir wasn't afraid. If they insisted on calling him a pirate, then he might as well embrace it and form a pirate crew. The government had already abandoned the notion of him being a bounty hunter. He had some free time now, he might as well get started on designing his pirate flag and choosing a name. Noir quickly summoned everyone, gathering them in the courtyard for a meeting. The meeting's official title was Preparatory Matters for the Establishment of the Pirate Crew, Full Crew Representative Conference. The courtyard was packed, everyone sitting upright, their expressions serious, as if preparing for a difficult battle. Many even had notebooks and pens ready to take notes. Mihawk and Ace were present as special guests. Ace sat with an air of solemnity, as if participating in a sacred ritual. Mihawk, on the other hand, was utterly bewildered. Are they children? Why am I even here? Noir stood at the highest point, cleared his throat, and announced through a megaphone. First item on the agenda: determining the number of crew members in our pirate crew. His words were met with an eruption of chatter and excited discussions. Mihawk stared, dumbfounded. They're all so enthusiastic about supporting their captain? And what's with that Ace guy? Why is he so excited? If he didn't know better, he'd think they were planning to overthrow the world. Chapter 130. Although Noir had rescued many people from Marie-Joise, only a few chose to join his pirate crew. They had witnessed firsthand the brutal intersection of blood and evil. Now, most simply desired a peaceful life as ordinary people. Noir wouldn't force them into anything they didn't want. After all, everyone had their own path in life. After a simple survey, many were quickly eliminated from the pool of potential recruits. Young children couldn't join. Most of the frail women didn't want to join either. And there were those who longed to return to their families, a task Noir promised to help them with. In the end, only about 500 people decided to join. But that was fine. Noir was content. Strength lay in numbers. Don't think that strong individuals don't need subordinates. They simply possess enough power, like Mihawk, to operate without assistance in battle. However, many things become inconvenient. As seen in the original story, Mihawk's domestic skills, from cooking to cleaning, were born out of necessity due to his solitary life. Shanks and Luffy's crews also followed the elite route, but they still had a sizable number of followers who could prove invaluable in critical moments. A list of those willing to join was presented to Noir. He glanced over it, getting a general idea of their skills and backgrounds. As expected, the giant siblings, Nilf and Manlif, were on the list. Many others had prior experience as pirates. Some even had bounties on their heads. This discovery made Enel envious. Despite his power, he still didn't have a single belly bounty on his head. Surprisingly, a few even possessed devil fruit powers. Most were zone users, with a handful of paramecia users whose abilities seemed rather peculiar. With the crew members mostly decided, Noir moved on to the main topic of the meeting. So, what do you all think our pirate crew should be called? Silence blanketed the room. After a long pause, Conis timidly suggested, "Can't we just call it the Noir Pirates?" Noir silently agreed. That was the name he had in mind too. But Enel immediately objected, his voice filled with excitement. "No way. A pirate crew shouldn't be named after a person. I say we call it the Thunder God Pirates." Wiper glanced at him impassively. "How about the Blood War Pirates?" "Too crude," Lucci countered. "I believe the Justice Pirates has a better ring to it." Enel scoffed. "Calling a pirate crew Justice sounds ridiculous, mine is better." Wiper spat in disgust. "Your name is just glorifying yourself. Stop messing around." Enel's eyes lit up. "So you do think I'm the Thunder God?" Wiper. "I think you're insane." As Enel and the others got into the discussion, the rest of the crew started to voice their own opinions. Conis, watching the growing excitement, mumbled dejectedly, "I think a simple name would be better." Khalifa comforted her. "This is what they call a man's romance, we wouldn't understand." Nearby, Noir approached Robin, seeking her opinion. Robin pondered for a moment, her hand stroking her chin, a hint of pride in her voice. "How about the Darkness Devil Pirates?" Khalifa and Conis stared at her, wide-eyed. Why did things suddenly get so sinister? Noir's lips twitched, speechless. After hours of debate, Noir decided to put an end to the discussion. "We'll call it the Underworld Pirates. In a way, all of you are survivors who escaped death from the underworld. Let's make the world remember our new names, our rebirth." Though the name wasn't particularly catchy, the captain's word was final. The crew, after some thought, readily accepted it. And so, thanks to Noir's terrible naming skills, the Underworld Pirates were officially born. Noir hadn't anticipated his crew's naming abilities would be even worse than his own. He should have hired Zoro to do it. After all, the swordsman had a knack for coming up with impressive names. He could just shake his head and spontaneously rap. Well, not rap, but recite lines of poetry. Noir then moved on to the third item on the agenda: designing the Underworld Pirates flag. This task didn't take long. As mentioned before, the people Noir had rescued were a diverse and talented bunch. A few skilled seamstresses and artists quickly produced a draft for the crew's approval. The design featured a stark white skull with sharp angles, its hollow sockets seemingly glowing with a faint red light. The skull was framed by a menacing gate. The eerie gate, adorned with strange patterns, was wide open, as if beckoning people into the depths of hell. Noir and the crew were quite pleased with the design. The more intimidating the pirate flag, the better, as far as these rough-and-tumble pirates were concerned. With the flag and crew name settled, Noir, with a grand gesture, sent Wiper and Enel back to Water 7 to order a massive new ship. The Ark Maxim was only slightly larger than the Thousand Sunny. Fitting 500 people on board was practically impossible. And so, Wiper and Enel, those two country bumpkins who had never held so much belly in their lives, nervously clutched their treasure chests as they set sail back to Water 7. Though Noir had some reservations about sending those two, he had no better options. Robin and Conus couldn't go. The new recruits were unfamiliar with Water 7. Lucci's identity had already been exposed by Iceberg. Returning there would risk further complications. So, sending these two simpletons was the best course of action. At least their strength compensated for their lack of intelligence. The first grand meeting concluded. Noir assigned tasks to his crew and then began working on his own secret agenda. He pulled Bluno aside, whispering, "Come with me." Lucci, who was nearby, paused. "Do you need my help?" Noir smiled and shook his head. "No, I just need Bluno to give me a lift." Goosebumps erupted on Bluno's skin. A chill ran down his spine. Lucci seemed to understand. "It's the second day. Are you going to execute another celestial dragon?" Noir chuckled and nodded. "Sengoku is searching for me all over the world. We can't even show our faces. But, I need to provoke him further. A man is most vulnerable when he's impulsive." Lucci raised an eyebrow, his curiosity piqued. "What are you planning?" Noir grinned mischievously. "The most dangerous place is the safest, and the safest place is the most dangerous." A plan of reckless audacity was born. Under a clear, starlit sky, Mary Joie, still recovering from the chaos Noir had unleashed, buzzed with activity. Atop a charred and towering spire, the air rippled as a familiar air door opened. A gleeful cry echoed from within, "He he he. Yours truly is back." Chapter 131. A strange cry pierced the air, momentarily stunning the busy guards. Hearing the commotion, several celestial dragons emerged from their residences. Upon seeing Noir's face, their expressions morphed into masks of terror. That detestable man. The enemy of God. The God Slayer. None of the celestial dragons would ever forget that night of raging black flames, the night that Noir, alone, had carved a path of destruction through the slave prison. More importantly, he had kidnapped over 30 nobles and, in full view of everyone, executed one of them. The horrifying inferno was seared into their memories. Some celestial dragons collapsed in terror, scrambling to escape. Noir, devil blade in hand, said to Bluno, "Prepare the escape route. I'm going to give them a little parting gift." Bluno, with a grimace, began creating an air door, resigned to his role as the getaway driver. Due to the vast distance, the portal opened slowly, giving Noir ample time to wreak havoc. He leapt from the tower, charging towards the densest concentration of people like a wild stallion unleashed. Last time, he'd been hampered by the need to protect his crew. Today, he was unburdened. The massive shadow beneath him stretched and expanded, ensnaring a large group of guards. The shadows twisted, and a sickening crack echoed as the necks of those caught within its grasp snapped. This was the power of his paramecia devil fruit, the rule of shadows. The shadows mimicked his movements. But the reverse was also true. Manipulating the shadows could control the movements of those connected to them. Even the buildings caught in the shadows began to crumble and collapse. Several celestial dragons huddled in corners, trembling with fear. Noir, clutching a wrapped bundle, grinned ominously as more guards swarmed towards him. A red wave of conqueror's haki erupted from him, washing over the battlefield. Countless guards collapsed, unconscious. Hum hum hum, Noir hummed a cheerful tune as he strode through the fallen bodies. He then raised his sword with a playful smile, cleaving through the door of a nearby building. Inside, several goggle-eyed celestial dragons stared at him in abject terror. This ruthless man didn't care if you were a celestial dragon or not. He was a devil who dared to defy the gods. Noir tossed the bundle at the celestial dragons. "Here's a little something for the Marines. Be sure to deliver it." He turned to leave, and the celestial dragons breathed a sigh of relief. But then, Noir suddenly reappeared, flashing back with an apologetic smile. "Sorry, I couldn't resist." A flash of crimson light, a chilling sensation in their chests. The obese bodies of the celestial dragons slumped to the floor, each with a gaping hole where their heart used to be, their eyes wide with the finality of death. Noir flicked the blood from his blade, a look of mock regret on his face. "Consider it a parting gift. 100 billion berries for each of Y." He finally left the building. From the arms of one of the corpses, the unwrapped bundle tumbled to the floor. It was the severed head of a celestial dragon, the skin flayed and dyed crimson. Carved into the forehead was a message. 35 days remaining. A brief eruption of chaos, then silence returned to the Holy Land. The scattered bodies and the ravaged landscape bore witness to the swift and brutal attack. Soon, the blue and white marine flags appeared on the horizon. A large contingent of marine officers raced towards Mary Joieuse. If Noir had seen them, he would have congratulated himself on his timely escape. Fleet Admiral Sengoku, Hero Garp, Chief of Staff Suru, and Admiral Akainu recently returned from a mission. This formidable lineup of seasoned veterans, a force to be reckoned with, would have been more than a match for Noir. Even a Yonko might struggle against them. Sengoku surveyed the ruined Holy Land, his heart filled with a mixture of grief and rage that he couldn't express. Barely a day after the previous attack, that damned Noir had returned. Why would he come back? Did he think they wouldn't reinforce their defenses? How dare he? Such reckless, gambler-like behavior, that devil. I will kill you. Akainu retrieved a severed head from the rubble, his expression impassive. Garp, seeing it, read the inscription aloud. 35 days remaining. Suru glanced at the corpses on the ground and sighed. These must be celestial dragons as well. Sengoku adjusted his spectacles, but the murderous intent in his eyes was unmistakable. Waves of haki pulsed from his body. Noir. Damn him. Seeing Sengoku's fury, Suru spoke calmly. One of his subordinates has the door fruit. He makes him incredibly difficult to defend against. We can't remain passive any longer. Sengoku looked at her, his voice strained with suppressed rage. What do you suggest? Suru's eyes gleamed with intelligence. Moria is most likely dead, killed by Noir. We've already deduced that. And Noir is currently, most likely at Moria's territory. Sengoku paused, then said, You're saying he didn't go to the New World, but instead returned to Thriller Bark? Suru nodded. Judging by his actions, Devil Noir prefers to do the unexpected, therefore. Sengoku considered her words, the possibility solidifying in his mind. He'd practically turned the New World upside down searching for Noir, leaving only the Yonko's territories unchecked. Suru's deduction made perfect sense. Sengoku barked out orders. Garp, Sakazuki, Garp yawned. Akainu snapped to attention, his face grim. We'll complete the mission, Fleet Admiral. At this point, Sengoku didn't care about slaves, morals, or anything else. Noir was a grave threat to the Marines. If they didn't eliminate him now, he would become an insurmountable problem in the future. Garp understood this as well and didn't object. How much effort he would actually put in, however, was known only to him. Akainu, the ever-diligent admiral, and Garp, the veteran vice admiral, set off for the first half of the Grand Line with 3 warships. Meanwhile, Noir, back in his home, after his successful raid, stretched contentedly. This provocation should force Sengoku's hand. A fierce battle was likely on the horizon. The coming days would be the most challenging Noir had faced at sea. But if he could endure, if even one of the celestial dragons in his possession survived, he could negotiate with the government from a position of strength, taunting the Marines with impunity. The world government wouldn't abandon the celestial dragons. Noir had planted a seed of fear in the hearts of those who believed themselves untouchable. You are not gods. You are merely lucky to have escaped Noir's wrath. If the Marines disregarded the safety of the celestial dragons and attacked Noir directly, they risked incurring the suspicion and opposition of all the world nobles. Time was running out for the Marines. Chapter 132. Noir, accompanied by Bluno, returned to Thriller Bark. Wiper and Enel, whom he'd sent to purchase a ship, had also sent back a message. As Iceberg had explained, a ship large enough to accommodate 500 people was considered moderately sized for a Grand Line pirate crew. Neither particularly large nor small. Constructing such a vessel would take considerable time. After all, even Krieg, the self-proclaimed East Blue ruler, had boasted a fleet of 50 ships and 5,000 men. A force that had initially allowed him to run rampant in the Grand Line for a short period. Sadly, his reign was short-lived. He encountered the volatile Dracul Mahawk soon after entering the Grand Line, his fleet decimated by the world's strongest swordsman. Upon returning to the East Blue, he was then soundly defeated by Luffy. A truly tragic tale. Iceberg had suggested that if Noir planned to expand his crew, he should consider purchasing 2 ships to accommodate a larger number of people. Noir agreed. Money wasn't an issue. He contacted Iceberg via Den Mushi and relayed his updated request. Once the ships were completed, Wiper and Enel would retrieve them. With everything arranged, his only remaining concern was the pursuing Marines. They likely wouldn't think to look for him on Thriller Bark, but he couldn't hide here forever. The problem was, he couldn't bring himself to abandon Thriller Bark. He hadn't yet figured out how to navigate such a massive ship into the New World. As Noir pondered his dilemma, Jabra rushed over, excitement evident in his voice. Captain, we found the person you were looking for. Noir's eyes lit up. Had they found Brook? The Yomi no Mi. The devil fruit that granted resurrection. He had to obtain it. Take me to him, Noir ordered. Jabra nodded and led Noir to Hogback's laboratory. Upon entering the lab, Noir immediately spotted the living skeleton. Brook, resurrected by the power of the Yomi Yomi no Mi. His soul returned to his body, though only his bones remained, giving him a rather unsettling appearance. Despite being a skeleton, Brook still sported a large afro, topped with a small top hat. A purple cane rested in his bony hand. Yo-ho-ho-ho, greetings, new master of Thriller Bark. Brook's voice was peculiar, tinged with apprehension. Moria, Thriller Bark's previous owner, had stolen his shadow and implanted it into the samurai Ryama, condemning Brook to a life in the shadows. To reclaim his shadow, Brook had challenged Ryama to a duel, but he was ultimately defeated, left to wander the gloomy seas. Today, a strange group had found him and brought him back to Thriller Bark, where he learned that both the Cage no Mi and Thriller Bark now had a new owner. Noir looked at Brook as if he were gazing at a priceless treasure. He smiled warmly. You come to reclaim your shadow? Brook nodded, his empty sockets revealing no emotion. His voice trembled slightly, yes. Noir snapped his fingers. Ryama's corpse, lying on a table in the lab, twitched. The shadow beneath him detached itself, flowing like liquid into Noir's hand, taking the shape of a skeleton. Of course. Here you go. Brook was incredulous. Jay, just like that? You're giving it back? He'd expected a challenge, a condition, anything, but Noir hadn't asked for anything in return. Brook, touched by Noir's generosity, removed his hat and bowed deeply. My deepest gratitude for returning my shadow. Noir barely registered Brook's words. A series of notifications sounded in his mind from the system. This time, there were several alerts, leaving Noir slightly disoriented. Encountered a key figure in the storyline. Reward issued, Underworld River, Universal Copy Card X1. After years of acculation, the host's innate talent has improved in quality. Otherworldly Visitor has evolved into Otherworldly Conqueror. Host's power has reached the system's designated first stage goal. System upgrade commencing. Estimated duration, 30 days. Copying function will be unavailable during the upgrade. The system is upgrading again. It took a moment for Noir to process the information. The previous upgrade had occurred when he first entered the Grand Line. Now, on the verge of entering the new world, it was upgrading again. This time, the process would take a whole month. And the system mentioned that his power had reached a designated goal. What did that mean? Noir couldn't help but wonder about the system's purpose, why it was helping him become stronger. He'd been worried for a while that the system's gifts were part of some sinister plot. After all, in Noir's understanding, only a god could create such a powerful system. But resistance was futile. He'd accepted his fate. He often forced himself to ignore these unsettling thoughts, but the system's latest message had reignited his curiosity. For a while now, Noir had had a strange feeling, as if a voice was telling him that the system held no malice. He even felt a sense of kinship with the system, as if it were an old friend. After pondering for a while without any answers, Noir pushed the thoughts aside. Let's check out the other rewards first. He focused his consciousness on the system interface, examining his innate talent, which had undergone a significant transformation. Otherworldly Conqueror. Red quality. Non-removable. Retains all traits of Otherworldly Visitor. After defeating an opponent, the chance of successful recruitment increases by 20%. When a female character's favorability towards the host is not negative, the longer the interaction, the faster the favorability increases, and the higher the obedience becomes, without any decline. Upon establishing a romantic relationship, the character's loyalty becomes permanently maxed, and their charm does not decrease. Why does this feel like my talent has evolved in a rather interesting direction? Noir scratched his head. Otherworldly Conqueror seemed to focus more on influencing others than Otherworldly Visitor. Recruitment would be a breeze after defeating an opponent, and his attractiveness to the opposite sex had been amplified. This is practically a harem-building talent. Noir didn't know what to make of it. His relationship with Robin hadn't even progressed beyond friendship. Did the system take pity on my love life and decide to give me a boost? The perpetually oblivious Noir scoffed internally. Does a handsome devil like myself need help with the ladies? Slow and steady wins the race, patience is key. He was simply choosing not to unleash his immense charm. Otherwise, he would have been drowning in admirers. After justifying his single status to himself, Noir reluctantly moved on from the Otherworldly Conqueror talent and focused on the other reward. Underworld River. The name itself sounded impressive. When Noir saw the ability's description, his eyes widened with excitement. He'd been worrying about how to transport Thriller Bark to the new world, and here was the solution. The Underworld River wasn't just an ability, it was a pocket dimension. 140 Chapter 133 Noir directed the Underworld pirates, steering the Thriller Bark towards a specific location. Once there, he led everyone to the bow of the ship, where they gazed out at the sea before them. Lucci, puzzled, asked, "Why have you brought us here?" Noir smiled faintly. "To show you my new ability." He extended a hand, pressing it against the air. Everyone, let's take a trip to the underworld." As his voice fell, a massive vortex appeared in the air before him, and a thick black fog began to spread across the sea. This fog was even more eerie than the mists of the Florian Triangle. It slowly enveloped the entire ship, swallowing it whole. From an outsider's perspective, the colossal ship, as large as an island, simply vanished, consumed by the black fog. The underworld pirates panicked. Lucci, his expression grim, observed their surroundings. What's happening? Robin quickly noticed something unusual and pointed towards the sea. The water. What has it become? The blue sea had transformed into a strange, dull, yet it wasn't murky. It seemed oddly pure, even sparkling with faint points of light. The crew stared at the water in astonishment. Brooke, brought along for the ride, suddenly experienced a strange sensation. A ghostly, greenish-blue form emerged from his body. The sight nearly sent the crew into a frenzy. Brooke's soul looked down at itself in surprise. "I become a soul again?" Noir, observing Brooke's soul, muttered thoughtfully, as if entering a trance. Spirits who evade the curse of death by the power of demonic might cannot set foot in underworld. A chill ran down Robin's spine. She looked at Noir, concern etched on her face. "Are you alright?" Noir snapped out of his trance, scratching his head. "I don't know why, I just felt compelled to say that." Robin continued to watch him with worry. He seemed like his usual self, yet there was an ancient, almost weary, quality to his demeanor. The thriller bark sailed steadily into the underworld river. It seemed endless, with nothing but the strange water in every direction. Occasionally, flashes of crimson light flickered on the surface, like scattered flower petals. Noir was puzzled. This is the underworld river? The system's description of this ability had promised a personal pocket dimension, a gateway to the underworld river, filled with objects of unique power. But there was nothing here but the sea, not a single other thing in sight. And if this truly was underworld, shouldn't there be some sort of structure? Were the underworld gods not on duty? Forget it. Let's go back, Noir said, shaking his head in disappointment, turning to give the order to his crew. No response. Noir whirled around. Everyone on the ship had vanished. What the? He quickly extended his observation hockey. His senses were amplified in this strange sea, and he quickly located everyone. They were all, including Brooke's soul form, walking in the same direction, their eyes blank, their steps measured. Yes, walking. They were walking on the surface of the underworld river. The entire group, like mindless zombies, trod upon the water, which remained undisturbed without a single ripple. Panic rising, Noir rushed after them. "You can walk on the underworld river? Seriously?" He leapt onto the water, half believing, half doubting. Splash! The somewhat portly Noir created a massive splash, sinking rapidly towards the bottom. Noir's expression was one of utter disbelief as he held his breath. How is this possible? They can walk on the water, but I can't. He flailed his limbs, swimming awkwardly towards his crew. After struggling for a while, Noir noticed something peculiar. He could breathe underwater, and the usual pressure and buoyancy of the sea were completely absent. His movements in the water seemed to be controlled by his own will. Finally, he caught up to his rapidly walking crew. Blocking their path, he shouted, "Hey, hello? Lucci, wake up, I'm making funny faces at you, Jabra. If you don't answer me, I'll cut off your..." "Robin, say something, I'll lift your skirt," he yelled and shouted, but they remained expressionless, continuing their steady march in the same direction. Noir sighed. Should I just knock them all out and drag them back? But there are too many of them. Just as he was racking his brains for a solution, something changed in the distance. A shimmering object emerged from the vast expanse of the sea. A mirror, as green as emerald, appeared on the surface, as if by magic. Everyone gathered around the mirror like pilgrims at a sacred site. Noir watched curiously, but they did nothing but stare at the mirror. Losing his patience, Noir snatched the mirror. Robin and the others immediately shifted their gaze to him. Puzzled, Noir tried to figure out what the mirror was for. Absent-mindedly, he angled the mirror towards Robin. The surface, which had previously reflected nothing, now displayed Robin's image. Then, images flickered across the mirror's surface. Like short video clips, several scenes played in succession. The first scene depicted a raging inferno. A small figure, pursued by a tall, imposing man, escaped the flames. Noir recognized them instantly. A young Robin and Aokiji. It was the destruction of Ohara. Why is the mirror showing this? The next clip showed a large, round giant. Noir remembered Robin mentioning him. A marine who had saved her as a child, a person she considered her benefactor. The third clip was even more surprising. It showed Noir himself. The scene depicted Noir and Robin on the ship. The first time he'd probed her hidden thoughts, the first time he'd offered her a place on his crew. Several more scenes flashed by, some showing Robin's past in the underworld, others depicting moments with Noir. Many of the scenes were completely unfamiliar to Noir. For instance, Noir stared at the mirror, dumbfounded. In the video, Robin and you were getting married? But the wedding was bizarre. The servers were dressed as ghouls and goblins, and little, lopsided zombies catered to the guests. The whole scene had a distinctly macabre aesthetic. Among the guests, Noir recognized familiar faces: Enel, Wiper, Khalifa, Konus, and others. Robin, wearing a black wedding dress, beamed, seemingly pleased with the arrangements. Even through the mirror, Noir could sense Robin's peculiar taste. 140 Chapter 134 Noir's expression was a picture of bewilderment. A subway, a cell phone, an elderly person. Marrying Robin himself wasn't the issue, but with the wedding venue set up like this, would her mother-in-law approve? Belmere would be shocked for a century. Even Noir himself was momentarily stunned. He fiddled with the mirror. What exactly was its purpose? Could this highly advanced device be controlled with his mind, like his system? Noir experimented, attempting to connect with the mirror using his consciousness. Remarkably, the mirror seemed to possess a faint sentience. Noir quickly established a link with it. Under his control, the images of Robin within the mirror vanished, and a glowing orb emerged from its surface. Hesitating briefly, Noir guided the orb into Robin's body. Robin reacted instantly. Her beautiful eyes regained their light. Her expression became animated, and she looked at Noir with a puzzled frown. What just happened? Before she could finish her sentence, the seawater beneath Robin's feet reappeared, and she plunged downwards. Noir rushed forward and caught her. Noir, now thoroughly confused, held Robin in his arms. How can I stand on the water again? And why can't Robin? Robin, still shaken, whispered, Noir, what's going on? Noir sighed. There's some strange ability I'm experimenting with. I seem to have accidentally affected you all. Do you have any memory of what just happened? You were all acting like you'd lost your souls. Just now. Robin looked dazed, trying to recall the events. You led us into a strange area of the sea. The water's color was odd, and I found myself captivated by it. Then, on the surface of the water, I saw. Robin's expression shifted from thoughtful to sorrowful, then finally to something more complex. Noir, his curiosity piqued, asked, what did you see? Robin turned away, burying her face in Noir's chest, avoiding his gaze. It's nothing. Noir blinked. So, the mirror showed what Robin saw in the underworld river. Without wasting any time, Noir, with the dexterity honed by years of singlehood, used the mirror on the rest of his crew. One by one, glowing orbs returned to their bodies. A series of splashes followed. Noir, using his ice fruit powers, created a platform of ice to catch the falling women. As for his male crewmates. Ah, such spectacular splashes today. Robin spoke, a hint of worry in her voice. Many of them are devil fruit users. Will they be alright? Noir waved away her concerns. They'll be fine. Many of them are good swimmers. We'll just fish them out. Khalifa, having regained her senses, assessed the situation and looked at the sea with concern. But, it doesn't seem like anyone's coming up. 1 second, 5 seconds, 10 seconds passed. Still, no one surfaced. A heavy silence fell over the group on the ice. Noir smacked his forehead and forced a smile. Ah, I get it now. Damn it, enraged. Noir jumped back into the water, quickly pulling everyone to the surface and onto the ice platform. What in the world is the principle behind this damned ability? The crew was still disoriented, their expressions dazed. Noir led them back to Thriller Bark. Once on board, Noir began piecing together information about the underworld river based on his crew's accounts. After some investigation, he had a better understanding of how this world worked. When someone looked into the waters of Underworld, they would see reflections of their past, mostly painful and sorrowful memories. But soon after, the waters would conjure illusions of the most lovely things they could imagine. This realistic fabrication would gradually lure them into a state of blissful oblivion, turning them into puppets. Those who souk-bed would become empty shells, standing motionless in the water. Upon regaining consciousness, they would sink to the bottom, devil fruit user or not. Crucially, none of this affected Noir. This world seemed to be influenced by his subconscious. Initially, he hadn't believed he could stand on the water, and he'd fallen in. Later, when he found it uncomfortable to hold his breath underwater, he suddenly gained the ability to breathe. Now, Noir felt he could control anything within the sea. This ability wasn't as useless as he'd initially thought. In battle, he could drag his opponents into the underworld river. Once they saw the water, even an emperor of the sea would become a mindless husk. Noir raised his hand, and Thriller Bark, shrouded in black mist, moved out of the underworld river, returning to the Florian Triangle. Though the surroundings were still shrouded in darkness, the atmosphere was less oppressive. Everyone breathed a sigh of relief. Brooke's soul returned to his body, his voice trembling. That world was truly scary. The underworld pirates nodded, still shaken by their experience. Being inexplicably dragged into the sea and unable to swim out would terrify anyone. Many had witnessed idyllic fabricated lives, and they were still reeling from the experience. Even Lucci's expression was slack. He said to Noir, "Captain, please don't use that ability again." Noir offered an apologetic smile. "I won't let anyone be affected by Underworld again. But I'll have to ask everyone to bear with me for a bit longer." Though some were reluctant, it was their savior's command. They would obey, even if it meant forcing themselves. Besides, they knew what to do now. Simply avoid looking at the water. Noir spent some time calming everyone down. The illusions woven by the underworld river were potent indeed. Even the usually composed Robin seemed disturbed, sitting in a corner, drawing circles on the floor. Noir couldn't fathom what was going through her mind. In the shadows, Robin sighed. That wedding wasn't bad, actually. What a shame. Noir held the mirror he'd retrieved from the underworld river, examining it with fascination. This mirror was essentially a miniature portal to Underworld. As long as Thriller Bark sailed out to retrieve those trapped within, it functioned as a portable storage space. His system's inventory could only store system rewards, not other items. Noir, and perhaps even some higher powers, had long been dissatisfied with this limitation. Now, he finally had something that served a similar purpose. While the underworld pirates were experimenting with the underworld river, completely unaware, a massive marine fleet was approaching the Florian Triangle. Vice Admiral Garp and Admiral Akainu were on their way, and they were bringing the full force of their fury. Chapter 135. After a brief respite, the following day, Enel and Wiper returned with 2 large warships. The entire underworld pirates boarded the ships, and along with the Ark Maxim, the 3 vessels set sail. Ace's Spade pirates followed Noir, journeying together towards the New World. Mihawk continued to travel with them. Noir had invited Brook, the skeleton musician, to join his crew, but Brook declined. His reason was simple. He wanted to retrace his steps and see how Laboon, the whale he'd promised to reunite with, was doing. Unlike Luffy, whose dream of becoming king of the pirates involved circumnavigating the globe and thus ensuring another meeting with Laboon, Brook chose to travel alone. Noir wasn't bothered. He had already copied Brook's Yomi Yomi no Mi ability before the system shut down. For now, the ability was stored in his compendium, waiting for a suitable talent to replace. It wasn't that Noir was unwilling to have members of the Straw Hat crew as companions, but he currently didn't need someone of Brook's level of strength. He wasn't actively seeking to expand his crew at the moment. He already had a considerable number of powerful individuals under his command. The underworld pirates served as his rank and file force, their loyalty and combat strength rivaling any other crew in the New World. His executive officers, Enel, Wiper, Lucci, and the others were formidable fighters. What Noir lacked were top-tier combatants, individuals who could stand toe-to-toe with the world's strongest. Otherwise, a single Marine Admiral would be enough to give him trouble. If the Marines sent 2, or even a Warlord-level opponent, Enel and the others wouldn't be able to handle it. Noir understood Brook's strength. While respectable, it was ultimately limited. The person Noir truly wanted to recruit was Dracule Mihawk. Oh, and Crocodile wouldn't be a bad addition either. The Ark Maxim led the way, emerging from the mist into the open sea. Robin, holding the log pose, kept them on course, while Noir continued to pester Mihawk. "Hawkeye, wouldn't you like to join my crew?" Noir persisted, trying his best to persuade the swordsman. Mihawk, like an elegant nobleman, sipped his wine while basking in the sun. No. However, occasionally joining in on the action can be quite stimulating. Just as Noir was about to try again, Mihawk interrupted him. "But, if you truly retake and occupy Noitum, I might consider moving there." Noir's eyes lit up. Moving there? Wasn't that essentially the same as joining his crew? Mihawk's intentions were clear. Free lodging, excellent treatment. And, crucially, someone readily available as a sparring partner, with the freedom to choose whether or not to participate in battles. Mihawk saw Noir's strength and sincerity, which influenced his decision. It was a mutually beneficial arrangement. Both Noir and Mihawk felt they had gained something from the agreement. Now, Noir was even more curious about Noitum. It was time to establish his own territory. Having his own kingdom would provide a safe haven for the people he rescued from Mary Joieuse. It was a win-win situation. Just then, several explosions echoed across the distant sea. Enel, with his exceptional range of perception, was the first to sense something amiss. He transformed into lightning and soared into the sky, his golden staff unleashing a barrage of lightning bolts. Black cannonballs exploded in midair, revealing the enemy's position. Noir's expression turned serious. "They found us this quickly?" as expected of Sengoku. The underworld pirates raised their weapons, their faces alight with excitement. This was their first battle as members of the underworld pirates, under Noir's command. They couldn't afford to lose face. A massive marine fleet approached. On the lead ship, Noir spotted a familiar figure. "Old man." Ace groaned, covering his face with his hand. "Him again?" Beside Garp, Noir saw another Marine Admiral, Akainu Sakazuki. Noir had already encountered Aokiji and Kizaru. Now, the final admiral stood before him, and his presence felt different. Akainu was much more imposing than the other two, radiating an aura of lethal intensity. Honestly, Noir felt that among the marine admirals, Akainu was the most suited for the position. He had a strong sense of hierarchy, obeyed orders without question, and despite his brutal methods, he was the hardest working admiral. But compared to Aokiji, he lacked compassion. Akainu would readily sacrifice those he deemed unimportant to achieve his mission objectives. This inherent ruthlessness, combined with his unwavering dedication to his duty, made him far more dangerous than Aokiji, whose convictions were strong but whose stance was less absolute. A marine admiral and the hero of the marines. Sengoku really thinks highly of me, Noir remarked with a wry smile. On the neighboring ship, Ace, shading his eyes with his hand, grinned. So many marines, I'll take care of that one. With that, Ace leapt into the sea, landing on a small boat. Flames erupted from Ace's feet, propelling the specially designed boat forward, leaving a trail of fire in its wake. Garp watched Ace approach, his face creased with a frown. Ace, you're causing trouble for me again. Ace flashed a bright smile, his right fist gathering flames as he pulled it back. He then unleashed a powerful punch. Fire Fist, a fiery orange fist, tinged with white, hurtled towards the marine warship. It's the pirate, Portgas d'Ace. Get out of the way, that's his Fire Fist. As the marines scrambled to avoid the incoming attack, a towering figure stepped forward. Akainu's stern face remained impassive. He muttered with disdain, how presumptuous. A wave of intense heat emanated from him as molten lava, like an erupting volcano, formed into a fist and collided with Ace's attack. The Magma Fist and Fire Fist clashed, creating a violent explosion of heat. The magma engulfed Ace's flames, like a hyena tearing into its prey, relentlessly consuming the orange flames. But when the magma reached the small patches of white fire, its advance faltered. Though the Fire Fist was ultimately extinguished, Akainu looked at Ace with surprise. That fire, it's strange. The temperature is incredibly high. Chapter 136. Seeing his usually unstoppable Fire Fist easily dispersed, Ace's expression turned serious. He ignited his flames once more and charged towards the warship. As the ships drew dangerously close, Noir yelled, prepare for battle. He then drew Devil Blade and followed after Ace, ready to intervene if necessary. The 4 ships of the underworld pirates, along with Ace's vessel, were swiftly surrounded by the marine warships. Close-quarters combat was imminent. With a flick of her wrists, Robin sprouted a row of arms along the side of the ship, pushing a wave of marines into the sea. Jabra, Khalifa, and the others, utilizing their mastery of Rokushiki, effortlessly overwhelmed the marines, who had trained in the same techniques. Enel, his golden staff transformed into a trident by lightning, charged into the fray, his legs wreathed and crackling, lifelike thunder dragons. He capsized marine ships one after another. Wiper and Lucci were even more direct. The 2 physically powerful devil fruit users tore through their opponents, leaving a trail of defeated marines in their wake. Finally, the vice admirals, dispatched by Garp and Akainu, stepped forward to stem the tide of the ferocious pirate assault. Momonga, standing among the vice admirals, drew his katana, his eyes fixed on Enel. Enel, your reign of terror ends here. Enel burst into maniacal laughter, some passive talent apparently triggered. Bring it on, he taunted the vice admiral. Lucci, his expression impassive, found his opponent. Wiper was intercepted by Vice Admiral Yamakaji. The roar of thunder echoed continuously from behind as Noir and Ace advanced side by side, boarding Garp and Akainu's ship. Akainu, radiating hostility, snarled, damn pirates, you dare come to us? Steam rose from his body as molten magma dripped from his form. His arms transformed into flowing rivers of lava. Ace, undaunted, faced Akainu. For some reason, the mere sight of the man filled him with unease. His arms ignited with orange-white flames, and he exchanged blows with Akainu. But the moment his fist connected with Akainu's body, Ace's expression changed. He quickly retracted his hand, his arms scorched black. He'd actually been burned. Akainu, observing Ace's surprise, raised his massive magma fist. Magma is superior to fire. Prepare to die. Ace dodged the descending fist, narrowly avoiding a molten punch through his chest. It had been a while since he'd felt the sting of a burn. The sensation was unexpected but didn't instill fear. Instead, a spark ignited in Ace's dark eyes. A confident grin spread across his face as he muttered. If it were just my own power, my flames might not be able to burn you. But now, my fire carries more than just my own strength. Akainu's brow furrowed slightly. Ace placed his left hand on his right wrist, the blood in his body surging as he pushed his Mera no Mi powers to their absolute limit. His energy seemed to drain instantly, his face paling alarmingly. Then, a tiny flame flickered to life in his palm. Unlike his usual orange-white flames, this flame was compressed into a small, intensely hot point, flickering unsteadily. It wasn't pure white, but rather a pale, ominous white that radiated an aura of danger and fear. Akainu stared at the tiny flame, a sneer on his face. "You think you can defeat me with that?" Sweat dripped down Ace's face as he grinned, a strange but confident expression on his lips. "Let's find out. Hopefully, Noir can fish me out of the water afterward." With Akainu occupied, Noir found himself facing Garp. Garp's iron fists, coated in haki, struck Noir's blade with heavy, resounding blows. Noir raised Devil Blade, desperately parrying the relentless assault. What the hell? Who's the main character here? This old man's physical strength is insane. His Busashoku haki is twice as strong as mine. Noir had only recently acquired Garp's haki talent and hadn't yet reached the old man's level of mastery. He was caught off guard by the sheer force of the attacks. Garp laughed boisterously. "What's wrong, Noir? Where's that power you used to wreak havoc in Marie-Joieuse?" Provoked, Noir, never one to back down from a challenge, gritted his teeth. "Damn it, you're forcing me to get serious." As soon as he spoke, Garp, who had just casually thrown a punch, suddenly froze. He looked down to see his lower body encased in ice. Noir, transformed into light, vanished instantly. His blade slashed towards Garp's shadow. Garp shattered the ice, effortlessly stepping back to avoid the attack. Noir slipped into the shadows. The shadows on the deck rippled and flowed, forming shadowy tendrils that snaked towards Garp, attempting to bind him. Garp slammed his fist onto the deck in annoyance, splitting the ship in two. A golden flash descended from the sky as Noir, moving at light speed, slashed downwards. Without even looking up, Garp swung his arm, his fist colliding with Noir's blade. Not only did the attack fail to harm Garp, but it sent Noir flying backward, crashing through wood and walls. "Damn," Noir groaned, clutching his back as he struggled to his feet. This old monster who chased Roger across the Grand Line is truly one of the Marine's hidden guardians. Noir's current strength surpassed most of the 7 warlords, and he could even defeat an admiral under the right circumstances. He was powerful. But today, old man Garp had taught him a harsh lesson. Garp, standing on the shattered deck, laughed heartily. "So, kid, do you yield?" Noir hefted his sword, his expression unchanged. "I can do this all day." A black shadow flickered. Noir attacked again, but this time, his eyes were different. His dark eyes gleamed with a sharp, focused intensity. A chilling killing intent radiated from him, dropping the temperature around them drastically. Crimson lightning crackled across the deck, spreading over the surrounding sea, whipping up massive waves. It was as if Noir had instantly dragged Garp into hell itself. Feeling the increasing pressure against his fists, as if influenced by the oppressive aura, Garp grinned excitedly. "Now that's more like it." Noir gritted his teeth, pushing his strength into the blade. Suddenly, an even more terrifying force surged back through the sword, threatening to shatter his arm. He unleashed both armament and conqueror's haki, pushing his limits. He wouldn't be outdone in a haki clash. The two were locked in a stalemate, their haki clashing violently. Just as Noir was about to unleash even more power, a wave of intense heat washed over them. A tiny, pure white spark descended from the sky, landing gently before erupting into a devastating inferno. A pale white pillar of fire shot towards the heavens, the force of the explosion shaking the very air. Noir and Garp were both caught off guard and sent flying by the blast. As the white fire dissipated, a mushroom cloud lingered in the sky where the explosion had occurred. Noir, covered in soot, clung to a piece of driftwood. Garp, rubbing his head, yawned and looked up. Then, both of their bodies stiffened as they stared in disbelief at the center of the massive explosion. A gigantic whirlpool churned in the sea, the displaced water still raining down from the sky. Nearby marine ships had been completely obliterated. Did Ace just create a nuke? Seriously? Chapter 137? Noir stared, eyes wide with shock, at the massive explosion on the sea's surface. A few wisps of white fire still flickered and danced on the waves. Ace must have developed a special high-temperature flame and then used compression and expansion to create a bomb. Even though Noir had only made a passing suggestion, Ace had somehow managed to develop an even hotter, paler flame. As expected of someone with the blood of the Pirate King. But where was Ace? A chilling thought struck Noir. Had Ace used that move to take Akainu down with him? Garp clearly had the same thought. He anxiously scanned the area. After a moment, a still figure appeared within his range of perception. Ace, a charred figure, barely recognizable, floated lifelessly in the depths, slowly sinking. Panic seized Noir. He plunged his hand into the water. The boiling sea rapidly cooled, a layer of frost forming on the surface. The ice spread, thickening, reaching towards Ace until Noir finally grasped him. With furious strikes of Devil Blade, Noir shattered the ice and quickly pulled his friend out of the water. Garp didn't interfere, watching them with a complex expression. Thank goodness he's alright, that reckless kid, as the old man stood there, lost in thought. A faint stirring beneath the ice caught his attention. It was Sakazuki, trapped within the frozen lair. Akainu wasn't in good shape either. He was unconscious, covered in severe burns, his arms particularly badly injured. His usually bulging muscles seemed to have shrunk significantly. Garp's eye twitched. It's a miracle he survived such a close-range explosion. Akainu was out of commission, and so was Ace. That must have been a suicidal move from Ace, like Luffy pushing himself to the limit with gear 2nd and 3rd simultaneously. 1,000 damage to the enemy, 1,200 to himself. Ace's injuries were so severe they'd even affected his internal organs, potentially causing long-term damage. Noir carefully hoisted the weakened Ace onto his back. While Garp was busy tending to Akainu, he made a dash for the underworld pirate's ship. Garp's stern face hardened. He tossed the rescued Akainu aside and charged after Noir, roaring, "Noir! Drop Ace and surrender!" Noir leapt to the side just as Garp's fist shattered the ice where he'd been standing. "Are you crazy? Your grandson is injured," Noir yelled back, exasperated. Garp's reply was just as loud and indignant. "That's why I'm telling you to drop Ace, you surrender, and I'll take him in." "Damn you, you stubborn old geezer." More and more Marines were closing in. Those scattered by Ace's white firebomb attack had regrouped. Noir, his face grim, continued to run towards the underworld pirate's ship. Enel, still dazed from the shockwave of the explosion, called out, "What a powerful blast, did that idiot really do that?" Ace, or idiot, as Enel called him, was the label Enel had given him. Incidentally, in Enel's mind, the other crew members had labels like, vulgar annoying woman, mustachioed catman, woman who will beat you senseless if provoked, and so on. Using his mantra, Enel realized most of the enemy had been caught in the explosion. He cheered, but his joy was short-lived as he spotted Noir running towards them. Noir waved his arm, and a dense black fog materialized from somewhere on the sea. He shouted to Enel, "Enel, get the Arc Maxim airborne. The other 2 ships are going into the underworld." The underworld pirates, seeing their captain return, were filled with renewed confidence. "Aye, Captain," they responded in unison. Garp glared at the pirates and roared, "Don't even think about it." His black fist slammed onto the ice, sending powerful shockwaves towards the ship. Just then, a certain laid-back swordsman finally decided to act. A flash of emerald green filled the air for a split second, followed by a deafening explosion that shook the heavens. Garp stared at the man on the ship, his expression a mixture of surprise and annoyance. "Dracule Mahawk, you're a warlord. What do you think you're doing?" Mahawk, the world's greatest swordsman, casually held his massive black blade, Yuru, his sharp golden eyes fixed on Garp. "Your men are in my way." Garp glared back. He'd warned Sengoku that the warlords were a bunch of unreliable brats. Despite his carefree demeanor, Garp had a keen understanding of the world's political landscape. Otherwise, Sengoku wouldn't have tolerated his constant presence in his office. Besides slacking off, Garp often provided Sengoku with valuable insights on important matters. The warlord system, a method of appeasing powerful pirates, was destined to fail from the very beginning. They were nothing more than tools used by the Marines to maintain a precarious balance of power. So Garp had no illusions about Mahawk's loyalty or reliability. While the world's greatest swordsman and the hero of the Marines faced off, Noir reached the Spade Pirates' ship and carefully handed Ace over to his crew. He then ordered his crew to sail the remaining ships into the underworld and promptly closed the entrance to the underworld river. The Marine fleet, left behind in stunned silence, stared at the vanishing underworld pirates, their minds reeling. What ability did Devil Noir copy now? How did he make those ships disappear into thin air? The underworld river was Noir's personal dimension, and he could open its entrance wherever he was. All Noir needed to do was board the Arc Maxim and fly to a safe location. "Wait, look, that ship's flying?" A Marine pointed at the Arc Maxim in disbelief. Garp watched Noir's ship ascend, a look of admiration on his face. What a magnificent vessel, but as a high-ranking Marine officer, skywalk was a basic skill. Garp propelled himself into the air, rapidly closing in on the Arc Maxim's hull. "You're not getting away," he roared. Noir transformed into light, hovering in the air to engage Garp in combat. With experience from his previous encounter, Noir fought with more confidence this time. The more they fought, the more surprised Garp became. Although still raw, Noir's haki carried a familiar feel. It resembled Garp's own unique haki, yet it had a distinct, new essence, as if Garp himself had trained Noir. Not only does this kid have the copy fruit, but his haki aptitude is monstrous as well? Haki coursed through Noir's body. He let out a satisfied breath. Battle truly is the best training. Ever since he'd copied Garp's talent, no matter how much he trained, he'd been unable to replicate the Fist of Love. But now, fighting against Garp himself, he was finally making progress. However, even with Mahawk's intervention, he couldn't keep Garp at bay forever. He still needed a way to escape. An idea struck Noir. Using his light speed, he returned to the ship and grabbed someone, soaring high into the sky. "Help! Help me! You kid, put me down this instant." Noir chuckled, his voice echoing through the air. "With pleasure." Chapter 138. Garp's eye twitched. He'd forgotten about the celestial dragons Noir had captured. Noir, a faint smile playing on his lips, called down to Garp, "There are ice spikes below. I'm going to drop him." Garp, seemingly unconcerned, continued to charge towards Noir. He didn't care about the celestial dragon's life, and Noir cared even less. Lifting the squealing celestial dragon, Noir hurled him downwards. The world noble plummeted, his screams of terror echoing through the air. Garp's powerful fist sent Noir reeling back, but he couldn't help but glance at the falling celestial dragon. Sengoku had given him specific instructions before he left. TCH. Garp clicked his tongue in annoyance, abandoning his pursuit of Noir and diving after the celestial dragon. Just in the nick of time, before the world noble could be impaled on the ice spikes, Garp swatted him to safety with a mighty backhand. The celestial dragon tumbled across the ice, his fat face contorted in rage. "I'm a celestial dragon. How dare you treat me like this?" Garp picked his nose, ignoring the outburst. Anyone who could truly threaten Garp probably wasn't even born yet. Meanwhile, Noir, having successfully diverted Garp, caught up to the Arc Maxim, which had sailed a considerable distance. He turned back to Garp, a smug grin on his face. "Farewell, Mr. Vice Admiral." The Arc Maxim crackled with blue lightning, its twin paddle wheels churning as it accelerated. "Oh, and one more thing," Noir added, snapping his fingers. A gentle breeze ruffled his dark hair, revealing a triumphant smile. "Never make the mistake of underestimating me." Garp's heart skipped a beat at Noir's words. He whipped around to look at the ranting celestial dragon beside him. As if responding to a command, the world noble's body began to convulse violently. The shadow beneath his feet writhed and detached itself, flying back towards Noir. The fate of a shadowless person exposed to sunlight was a foregone conclusion. "No, stop." The celestial dragon's screams turned to shrieks of agony as his body, bathed in sunlight, rapidly disintegrated into a pile of ash. The Marines were horrified, but Garp remained calm, his eyes narrowed. Moria's ability. On board the Arc Maxim, Noir toyed with the shadow in his hand, absorbing it back into his body. This was Noir's remotely activated assassination technique, exploiting the weakness of shadowless beings to sunlight. He'd extracted the celestial dragon's shadow and replaced it with an artificial one he could control. This allowed the world noble to walk in the sunlight undetected. But whenever Noir wished, he could remotely recall the shadow, instantly ending the person's life. Looking at the pile of ash that remained of the celestial dragon, Noir's voice boomed across the distance, 34 left. "Tell Sengoku not to push me too far." Watching the Arc Maxim disappear over the horizon, Garp sat down heavily on the ice, a troubled expression on his face. Ace sailing with a schemer like that. It only makes him more dangerous. Marine headquarters had dispatched 2 top-tier fighters and several vice admirals, yet the underworld pirates had escaped. Though the news of Noir kidnapping celestial dragons and threatening the world government was suppressed, the fact that an admiral and Garp had been involved couldn't be hidden from the World Economy newspaper. News of this newly formed pirate crew spread like wildfire, their notoriety reaching every corner of the globe in a matter of days. Back at Marine headquarters, Akainu and Aokiji were severely injured, Kizaru was exhausted, and Sengoku received a call from the 5 elders. Sengoku answered the Den Den Mushi, bracing himself for the elder's furious voice. "Sengoku, what in the world are you doing? How many more Marines and government agents have to fall before you deal with this Noir?" Sengoku's face darkened as he explained, "Noir's abilities are unique, and he has Fire Fist Ace and his crew helping him. Furthermore, Dracul Mahawk seemed to have some connection with Noir." Before Sengoku could finish, the 5 elders interrupted him. "We don't care about excuses, we want results. The longer this drags on, the more celestial dragons Noir will kill. Do you have any idea the panic and outrage this is causing in the Holy Land? We're giving you 3 days. If you can't resolve this within 3 days, the government will take matters into its own hands." A sense of foreboding washed over Sengoku. "What do you mean?" Another elder's voice spoke. "We'll negotiate with him, and then, we'll offer him a position as a warlord of the sea." Sengoku slammed his fist on the desk, rising to his feet, his eyes wide with disbelief. "Negotiate? He's injured so many of our forces, and you want to recruit him? Are you just going to ignore the fact that this devil wreaked havoc in the Holy Land?" The voice on the Den Den Mushi calmed slightly. "Calm down, Sengoku." Sengoku took a deep breath, regaining his composure. "I understand negotiating, but why make him a warlord? Noir's strength is now known throughout the world. He also killed Gecko Moria. Making him a warlord would perfectly smooth things over and maintain the government's image. Always about maintaining their image, the conversation aged Sengoku several years. He felt as if his hair had turned a few shades whiter. But there was nothing he could do. The Marines, despite their power, were ultimately just the strongest military force under the world government's control. Funding, weapons, personnel, technology, everything revolved around the government. Without control over these resources, the Marines could never be truly independent, could never fully uphold their justice. What could he do? Resign? That wasn't an option. The 5 elders had given him an ultimatum: 3 days. That meant the government's tolerance was limited to the deaths of, at most, 3 more celestial dragons. But 3 days? What could they possibly accomplish in such a short time? With 2 admirals injured, what high-ranking fighters did the Marines have left? Sengoku picked up his Den Mushi, his voice grim. Inform all officers of vice admiral rank and above to return to headquarters within 24 hours. After issuing the order, Sengoku sat alone at his desk, staring at the new bounty posters that were about to be distributed. All of them were core members of the underworld pirates. The most prominent one was Noir's. Below the image, a bold line of text stood out. Devil Noir, extremely dangerous. Bounty increased to 300 million berries, dead or alive. Chapter 139. Devil Noir's bounty had jumped to a staggering 300 million. Even though the Marines had tried to suppress the real bounty, many sensed something was amiss. Normal citizens might just see the emergence of another powerful pirate, someone to be wary of, a potential disruption to their daily lives. But to those in power, those with a keen sense of the world's currents, it was a glaring red flag. The emperors of the sea, especially, knew the truth. This dramatic bounty increase could only mean the world government was trying to bury something. On a remote, unknown island, a drunken man received a newspaper delivered by a news crew. His eyes suddenly lit up. Red hair billowing, Shanks stared at the familiar face on the wanted poster. A wide grin spreading across his face. Isn't that the kid from East Blue, years back? Noir, to think he'd become this notorious. Yasop, startled awake, yelled irritably, "Quiet. It's the middle of the night." His shout roused the entire red hair pirates, camped out under the stars. Shanks excitedly brandished the wanted poster. "Look, Noir's become a big deal." Confused murmurs rippled through the crew. "Noir, who's that?" "Doesn't matter. Shanks." A bonfire blazing beside him, whooped, "Let's celebrate this kid we met once, party." The red hair pirates roared back, "You just want an excuse to party." Meanwhile, in the New World, on the ship of another emperor, the world's strongest man, Whitebeard Edward Newgate. Marco, the 1st Division commander, presented the new wanted poster. Newgate, his massive crescent mustache a testament to his power, leaned back in his enormous chair and glanced at the paper dismissively. More of the government's cover-ups. Stealing the heavenly tribute wouldn't warrant this much. What else has this Noir done? He looked at Marco. "Look into this." Marco, feigning disinterest, nodded. "Aye, Pops." As Marco left, Newgate stared at another bounty poster. Ace's new one, the young man's image even more defiant, the flames seeming to leap off the page. Portgas d'Ace, Newgate gazed at the youthful face, his thoughts drifting to years past, the era of rampant piracy, and to a man so powerful that even Newgate took him seriously. He placed Ace's bounty poster down, lost in thought. The wanted poster had reached the emperors, and it also reached Noir's family in the East Blue. In Kokoyasi village, peace reigned. Noir's growing reputation as the strongest hunter kept trouble away from his home. Early morning sunlight bathed the village, a tranquility shattered by 2 excited voices. "Belmere-san. Look, Sensei's bounty is huge." Kaide and Naomi burst through Belmere's door, their excitement bubbling over. Belmere, coming in from the orange grove, looked at them with surprise. Nijiko took the wanted poster with a smile. She read aloud, "Noir, captain of the underworld pirates, copy fruit user, commands over 500 men. Crimes: attacking a marine admiral, killing warlord Gecko Moria, stealing the heavenly tribute." Nijiko's eyes shone with pride. Big brother's amazing. Belmere took the poster, a fond exasperation in her voice. That restless little kid. Despite her words, her pride was evident. Nijiko, waving the poster excitedly, suddenly stopped. "Where's Nami? Does she know?" Kaide and Naomi froze, sweat beading on their foreheads. Well, we don't know." Belmere narrowed her eyes. "Where are you hiding?" The 2 girls exchanged glances and blurted out. "Nami-chan snuck out to steal from pirates again." "What?" Belmere roared like a mother tiger, making the 3 girls tremble. "Nami, that disobedient." On the coast, Nami, a large bag slung over her shoulder, shivered. She got this feeling whenever something bad was about to happen. "But it's fine, this time, I hit the jackpot," Nami grinned, picturing her future riches. Money was something she could never have too much of. She pulled out a wanted poster from her cleavage, Noir's first one, with the smaller bounty. She crumpled it, her teeth gritted. She'd had a treasure chest, once, and cherished it, but then Noir left, and her treasure vanished. She'd cried for days, not because her brother was gone, but because her money was. Everyone knew who'd taken it. But now, Nami's nose was high in the air as she patted her bag. Noir had been gone a while, and she'd made a fortune. He'd be so jealous, ha 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 ha. Her laughter echoed across the shore, startling the nearby news crew, which plummeted to the ground. A wanted poster drifted down, slapping Nami in the face. She ripped it off, annoyed, and saw Noir again. Another wanted poster? Her eyes turned into berry signs as she saw the bounty. But then she saw the mention of the heavenly tribute and froze. Why was he still richer than her? Chapter 140. Achoo! Aboard the Ark Maxim, soaring through the sky, Noir stood on the deck and sneezed violently. He rubbed his nose, grumbling as he looked up. The Belmere family's special brand of education told him that Nami was definitely badmouthing him again. Next time they met, he'd find an excuse to give her a good thrashing. Noir walked back into the cabin, a stack of bounty posters in hand, a smile playing on his lips. Lucci was feeding Hattori, his white pigeon. Wiper lay sprawled on the floor, snoring softly. Conus was playing with Sue, her little fox. Robin, seeing Noir enter, asked, "Well?" Noir nodded. "We're far enough away. Tell Enel he can stop generating electricity." Robin glanced back at Wiper, who immediately scrambled to his feet and headed below deck to relay the message to Enel. Nobody dared disobey the Queen of the Underworld. When Enel returned to the meeting room, Noir slapped the stack of bounty posters onto the table. "Everyone here, including myself, has a bounty now." Enel's eyes lit up, his earlier fatigue forgotten. "Excellent. How much belly do I have?" Everyone looked at the posters. The photos seemed to have been taken in Sabah archipelago. Enel snatched up his own bounty poster, his eyes scanning the details with anticipation. Enel, 10,000 Thunders, key officer of the Underworld Pirates, Logia-type rumble fruit user. Bounty, 150 million belly. Enel exploded at the sight of his epithet. "What, 10,000 Thunders? I'm clearly God of Thunder," he roared indignantly. Noir rolled his eyes. "Do you think the world government are your fanboys? Giving you a cool-sounding title? They'll choose whatever makes you sound the most threatening. Even my own epithet is terribly bland, and you want God of Thunder." Enel grumbled but conceded. Regardless, a first bounty of 150 million belly was impressive, even in the Grand Line. Wiper looked at his own poster with satisfaction. The description was similar to Enel's. Wiper, War God, key officer of the Underworld Pirates, ancient zone devil fruit user, suspected Ryu no Mi. Model. Pteranodon. Bounty. 130 million belly. Enel, seeing Wiper's bounty, immediately felt better. He burst into laughter, taunting Wiper, 130 million belly, ha 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 ha, less than mine. Wiper's face darkened. He'd been one-upped, and it stung. Are the Marines blind? How could I be worth less than this arrogant fool? Robin's bounty had increased, though only by 1 million belly. Somehow, Conus had also ended up with a bounty poster. Hers was rather cute, a very girly 13,140,000 belly. What about Lucci? Wiper and Enel curiously peered over Lucci's shoulder. They were so shocked by what they saw that they nearly choked. Killing weapon? Why does your epithet sound so cool? 220 million belly? Why is your bounty so high? Wiper collapsed to his knees in despair. Enel looked as if all the color had drained from the world. Aside from Captain Noir and Robin, the acknowledged second-in-command, Wiper, Enel, and Conus were the founding members of the Underworld Pirates, the most senior veterans. Lucci and his group had joined later, recruited in Water 7. And now the Marines were telling them that Lucci's bounty was higher than theirs? Lucci, unfazed, picked up his bounty poster. The government knows my abilities well. They've only seen a glimpse of yours. Plus, I specialize in espionage and assassination. The Marines probably think I helped the captain infiltrate Mary Joieuse. Lucci's explanation eased Wiper and Enel's frustration somewhat. Those two childish idiots, the women weren't concerned about bounties. Robin turned to Noir and asked, "What's our next move?" Noir paused, considering their options. The number of celestial dragons is dwindling. I doubt the government and the Marines will sit idly by. And after these recent setbacks, they'll be even more determined to retaliate. Mahawk, who had been absent earlier, emerged and sat beside Noir. The government's authority and the celestial dragon status cannot be challenged. The Marines have a week at most before they make their move. Lucci nodded, his expression grim. A major confrontation is inevitable, and the Marines will likely launch a full-scale assault. Noir nodded, considering the forces the Marines could deploy. Among the admirals, Aokiji had lost a leg in their previous encounter and wouldn't be fighting anytime soon. Akainu had nearly been taken down by Ace. That left Kizaru, but Mahawk was still with them, so that shouldn't be a problem. Along with Garp and Sengoku, there were only 3 combatants at admiral level or higher. At this point in time, Zephyr should still be with the Marines. Noir's face turned serious. A former admiral from the same era as Garp and Sengoku, Zephyr possessed haki comparable to Garp's, making him a formidable opponent. Add to that vice admirals like Momoshiki and Chaton, along with numerous other vice admirals and rear admirals, and the Marines' fighting strength was not to be trifled with. But Noir wasn't afraid. With the underworld river, he wasn't worried about being surrounded by the Marines. However, if Sengoku sent Zephyr after him, he could consider copying his talents. There were also several vice admirals and rear admirals. The underworld pirates' key officers alone might struggle against such a force. As Noir stared out at the vast ocean, Robin's voice broke the silence. At this rate, we'll reach Sabaody Archipelago soon. Sabaody Archipelago, and then, Fishman Island. Noir looked thoughtfully at the distant sea. After a moment of contemplation, his eyes glinted. To bolster our strength, I need to go to Fishman Island. Robin frowned. Isn't that too rushed? Coding the ship will take several days. Noir shook his head, his voice firm with resolve. I can go alone. There's something I need there. Princess Shirahoshi, the mermaid princess of Fishman Island, was beside him, one of the 3 ancient weapons. She possessed the ability to communicate with and command sea kings. That ability was highly likely to manifest as a talent. If Noir could copy Poseidon's power, dealing with the Marines would be much easier. The ability to command sea kings to attack would be a game-changer in a large-scale marine battle. As captain, Noir's words were law. No one objected. But Robin looked at him with concern. Noir, understanding her unspoken worries, leaned down and gently embraced her. I'm just going to make some preparations for the upcoming battle. I'll be back soon. Robin nodded, a smile gracing her lips. I understand. She lifted her head and gently kissed Noir. Be safe, and come back soon. The air suddenly filled with an inexplicable romantic tension. Khalifa and Konas watched with starry eyes. Lucci rolled his eyes. Wiper and Jabra were playing cards, and Enel was hanging from the ceiling, generating electricity and light, as usual. Chapter 141 Amazon Lily, a nation hidden within the Calm Belt, was a land shrouded in mystery. Its isolated location and natural barriers made it virtually impervious to invasion. For the men of the world, it was a legendary paradise, a land inhabited solely by women, the Island of Women. The nation's ruler was a pirate, known as the Empress Boa Hancock, renowned as the world's most beautiful woman. She was also the only female member of the 7 warlords of the sea. Today, Hancock was noticeably agitated. Inside the Grand Palace of Amazon Lily, Hancock sat on her throne, a dark expression on her face, biting her fingernail in thought. After a while, a small, elderly woman scurried into the throne room. This was Gloriosa, the former Empress of Amazon Lily, known affectionately as Nyan Ba, now serving as Hancock's advisor. As soon as Nyan Ba entered, Hancock's captivating face softened into a smile, her beautiful eyes sparkling with anticipation. Even after all this time, the Snake Princess is still so breathtaking, Nyan Ba thought, swallowing nervously. Leaning on her cane, she reported, We've inquired with the Marines about the incident in Mary Joieuse, but they refused to divulge any information. Hancock's beautiful features instantly hardened. In a flash, she was on her feet, her elegant leg lashing out like a whip, striking Nyan Ba. The startled advisor was sent flying out the window. Hancock's furious voice echoed through the palace. Then what was the point of coming back? Nyan Ba, rubbing her aching back, limped back into the throne room. Must you treat an old woman with such disrespect, she muttered. Hancock's face darkened. She grabbed the tiny old woman, ready to throw her out again. Nyan Ba, panicked, quickly explained. Calm down, Snake Princess. If someone really did kidnap celestial dragons, the government wouldn't just spread the news. Even if they did, the news wouldn't reach Amazon Lily here in the Calm Belt. Hancock's expression softened slightly. After a moment, she released Nyan Ba, who breathed a sigh of relief. After a moment of contemplation, Hancock issued a command. Inform the Kuja pirates, prepare for departure. Nyan Ba was taken aback. Where to? To Sabaody Archipelago. I need to confirm the truth about this celestial dragon kidnapping. Nyan Ba's eyes widened in alarm. She jumped in front of Hancock, pleading, Sabaody is crawling with celestial dragons. Aren't you afraid? Hancock stopped. Just as Nyan Ba thought she had reconsidered, a sharp pain shot through her backside. Bam! The unfortunate advisor was sent flying again, a trail of smoke marking her trajectory as she disappeared into the distant forest. The haughty empress, looking in the direction Nyan Ba had flown, scoffed. No one questions my decisions. The Kuja pirates, Boa Hancock's warlord crew, set sail in secrecy, their destination, Sabaody Archipelago. Meanwhile, on Sabaody, the underworld pirates finally made landfall. Returning to this island evoked mixed feelings for the crew. especially for Enel and Wiper, who had suffered their most humiliating defeat here. A certain admiral with a troublesome devil fruit had effortlessly defeated them all, even infuriating Noir in their initial encounter. Enel, no longer in the mood for sightseeing, asked listlessly, "Captain, when are we leaving this island?" Noir stroked his chin thoughtfully. "Let's find a coating mechanic first. Maybe there's a coated ship readily available." As they spoke, they walked down the street, known for its bubble culture, a popular trend on Sabaody. "Speaking of which, we're not going to run into any celestial dragons again, are we?" Wiper asked, scanning their surroundings nervously. Robin shook her head. "After what you did in Mary Joieuse, I doubt they'll let any celestial dragons roam freely for a while." Noir shrugged nonchalantly. "It doesn't matter. They're just celestial dragons. I'm not afraid of them." "But," Enel hesitated, "killing one celestial dragon costs us 10 billion berries." Everyone stared at him, sighing in unison. Ever since Noir had borrowed Enel's arc maxim along with his gold, Enel had become exceedingly greedy. His greed was different from Nami's or Noir's. Nami's greed was instinctual. She simply loved shiny things, but she was willing to spend money when necessary, though she was incredibly stingy with both herself and others. Noir was similar to Nami, but because he earned so much, he didn't hesitate to spend it. Although the men on the crew received a fixed amount of money when they landed on an island, their daily expenses, food, clothing, and other necessities were far from cheap. Enel, on the other hand, hoarded his money, refusing to spend a single berry. He simply enjoyed looking at his riches and giggling to himself. In a way, it was a sickness. As the crew collectively judged Enel for his miserliness, they unknowingly wandered out of the bustling streets and into the shadier parts of the island. Suddenly, the sound of a child's cries reached their ears. In front of a shop, with its windows and doors smashed, a group of burly men barged inside. Moments later, a man emerged, carrying a sobbing little girl. A woman, her face bruised and swollen, clung to the man, pleading, "Sir, please, spare my child. Her father has already been taken as a slave. I can't lose my daughter too." The man spat in the woman's face, his ugly features twisted in a sneer. "Get lost, don't try to bargain with me. Your daughter will be auctioned off, and if a celestial dragon takes a liking to her, she'll be set for life. Stop pretending to be pitiful." The woman's cries intensified. The man, growing impatient, punched her to the ground. The rest of the thugs surrounded her, kicking and beating her mercilessly. The surrounding people watched with indifference, no one offering to help. Noir was among them. He considered himself selfish. His journey on the sea was for his own benefit. He wasn't about to sacrifice himself for others, let alone play the hero. "You bastards, when Devil Noir arrives, he'll defeat all of you and the celestial dragons," the little girl suddenly cried out. Silence fell over the scene. Everyone stared at the girl in disbelief. That name, in just a few days, had become a taboo on this island, a word that could get you killed. Noir stopped in his tracks, sighing. He muttered under his breath, "Hopefully, no one calls me a saint for this." Chapter 142. Noir sighed, looking at the expectant gazes of Enel and Wiper behind him. A single syllable escaped his throat: "Go." Enel and Wiper, barely containing their eagerness, immediately understood and stormed off to intervene. But before they could even take a step, a voice rang out. "I advise you to reconsider your actions." Both sides paused. The woman looked towards the source of the voice with a flicker of hope, but her heart sank when she saw who it was. It was a blind man leaning on a cane. What could a blind man possibly do? Noir stared at the man, his mind reeling. This is ridiculous, right? A blind man of a large build, with that familiar scar, could this be the future Admiral Fujitora? Wiper and Enel immediately lost interest. The man who had been called out snarled, "Stay out of this if you don't want to die." Fujitora Isho remained unmoved. "Your actions are clearly unjust," he stated firmly. "Stealing someone's child will only tear families apart. You must stop this at once. You have a conscience. This woman's husband and daughter have been taken from her. Doesn't that make you think of your own family?" Fujitora continued his moral lecture. Noir, who had been about to charge in, and his two crewmates stopped in their tracks, waiting impatiently for the sermon to end. Wiper swung Enel's long earlobe back and forth, a bored expression on his face. This blind guy is so boring. Receiving no response, Wiper turned to look at Enel. The lightning man had somehow fallen asleep standing up. Noir scratched his head in confusion. Fujitora had a strong sense of justice in the original story, but he wasn't this much of a preacher, was he? The child trafficker finally snapped, unable to tolerate Isho's moralizing any longer. He roared, drawing his sword. "Men, take out this nagging blind man." His underlings, equally annoyed by the lecture, eagerly drew their swords and charged forward with surprising ferocity. The shouting startled Enel awake. He nearly joined the charge against Isho before Wiper pulled him back. Noir watched Isho with interest. As expected, seeing that his words had no effect, the man took action. Isho drew his sword from his cane, the sudden surge of power momentarily halting the child traffickers in their tracks. But after drawing his sword and a strange purple glow emanating from it, he sheathed it again. Everyone was confused. What was that? A polite demonstration before the real fight? Just as the traffickers were about to mock him, the sky suddenly darkened. Noir's heart skipped a beat. Could it be that move? Everyone looked up, their faces filled with dread. The clear blue sky was now covered by a massive, ominous shadow. Beneath the shadow, streaks of fire, caused by the object's friction with the atmosphere, painted the sky a fiery red. A meteor. The traffickers, faced with this catastrophic force, paled and screamed in terror. Even Enel and Wiper stared at the descending meteor in stunned silence. Holy crap! Noir and his crew thought in unison. First, a cannon to swat a fly, now a meteor to crush some thugs. Come to think of it, Fujitora's meteors never seemed to hit anything other than small fry in the original story. Noir released a wave of cold air, shielding his crew. He narrowed his eyes, observing the situation. The meteor continued its descent. Just as Noir was about to draw his sword, the traffickers, driven mad by fear, began to beg for mercy. Please, sir, we won't do it again. Isho drew his sword and swung it twice. The massive meteor stopped abruptly, less than 100 meters above them. The traffickers, having narrowly escaped death, didn't make a sound. They scrambled away from Isho as fast as they could, without looking back. Isho calmly sent the meteor back into the sky, the entire process smooth and effortless. Enel and Wiper's jaws dropped. This blind guy is that powerful? Noir clapped his hands, a smile playing on his lips, impressive. Isho, his blind eyes seemingly open, revealing unnerving white sclera, smiled. You seemed ready to assist as well. I only interfered. Noir shrugged noncommittally. The little girl returned to her weeping mother's arms, looking curiously at Noir and Isho. After a moment, the girl pointed at Noir, her eyes lighting up. Devil Noir. Are you Devil Noir? The girl's mother flinched, looking at Noir with a mixture of awe and fear. Though many commoners in Sabaody recognized Devil Noir and approved of his actions against the celestial dragons, they were also terrified of him. A man who killed a celestial dragon was capable of anything. Isho looked at Noir with surprise. Are you Devil Noir? Noir scratched his ear. Though I dislike the title, yes, that's me. The little girl broke free from her mother's embrace and rushed towards Noir, clinging to his leg as she cried, Devil Noir, can you help me find my daddy? Noir was taken aback. The girl's mother quickly pulled her back, apologizing profusely. I'm so sorry, sir, she's just a child, speaking nonsense. Please don't trouble yourself. Isho patted the girl's head, his brow furrowed. Where is this child's father? The girl's mother's face was etched with sorrow. My husband, he was sold as a slave to the celestial dragons. He's imprisoned in Mary Joieuse. Isho's expression turned grim. Mary Joieuse, the Holy Land, wasn't a place one could just barge into with pure intentions. It could be a death trap. Noir looked at the girl, thinking, Mary Joieuse, I have an idea. The mother and daughter, along with Isho, looked at Noir expectantly. I recently rescued some slaves from Mary Joieuse, Noir explained. They're part of my crew now. Some of my crewmates are still searching for their families. You could come with me and see if your husband is among them. Tears welled up in the mother's eyes as she thanked him profusely. The girl looked at Noir with adoration. Isho, however, was focused on something else entirely. His voice laced with disbelief. He asked, Mr. Noir, you rescued slaves from Mary Joieuse? Noir, finally finding an audience for his exploits, replied casually, it was nothing, really. Just burned down a bit of Mary Joieuse and kidnapped a few celestial dragons. The government wants to keep my actions quiet and minimize the impact, think again. Chapter 143 Noir brought the mother and daughter whom Isho had rescued to the shore and opened the gate to the underworld. The entrance to the underworld appeared as a large mass of peculiar black mist. It took a long time to charge and covered a considerable area. Isho remarked, there seems to be a powerful energy fluctuation ahead. Enel looked at him in surprise. You can tell even though you're blind? Isho nodded calmly. Though my eyes are closed, my heart can perceive much more. Noir couldn't help but retort, it's just observation hockey. No need to be so cryptic about it. Enel was taken aback. Observation hockey so mastered that it replaces sight, how is that even possible? Compared to Fujitora, Enel's observation hockey had a greater range, but Fujitora's was of a higher quality, allowing him to perceive details with the precision of eyesight. He could not only sense the emotions of others but also accurately pull down meteors from the atmosphere. Among observation hockey users, Fujitora was undoubtedly among the top 5. If Queen Odahime were still alive, her observation hockey would likely be ranked first. Noir was curious. What level was Fujitora's observation hockey? Unfortunately, his system was still upgrading and he wouldn't be able to copy abilities for another 2 days. But just taking a peek shouldn't be a problem, right? Noir focused the system's observation skill on Fujitora, and his stats appeared. Name: Isho Fujitora's Justice, Gold Quality. Fujitora Isho's sense of justice is exceptionally rare. When faced with those he deems evil, his will becomes even stronger, boosting his combat power significantly. For a period of time, his abilities and techniques consume no energy. Mind's Eye, Red Quality. Seeing the world with the heart. Enhanced observation haki allows him to perceive finer details. After blinding himself, he awakened the no evil trait, granting him an extremely wide range and the ability to sense emotions accurately. Devil Host, Zushi, Gold Quality. After consuming the Paramecia type Zushi no Mi, he is imbued with the power of a demonic entity, allowing him to manipulate gravity freely. Sea's Rejection, Purple Talent. While gaining demonic power, he is also cursed by the sea. The curse causes the sea to reject him, weakening him in contact with seawater and preventing him from actively using his abilities. Noir was impressed. As expected, admirals were not to be underestimated. The Fujitora's Justice talent allowed Isho to fight without depleting his energy. Mind's Eye enabled him to perceive everything around him. And then there was the devastating power of the Zushi no Mi. However, Noir felt it was a shame that Mind's Eye, representing observation haki, required him to be blind to reach its full potential. Even if it underwent fusion and mutation in the future, that condition would likely remain. And surprisingly, Fujitora's observation haki was only red quality, just like Enel's. This puzzled Noir. If even Fujitora's was only red, whose observation haki could possibly reach gold quality? Katakuri's observation haki could see into the future. He wondered if that was gold quality. But Noir, a perfectionist, wanted to find the observation haki with the highest potential. He'd have to visit Fishman Island and observe Shirahoshi. Her observation haki was unique, an innate ability inherited from Queen Odahime. Though she couldn't compare to the late queen, Noir could potentially enhance her ability. But there was no point dwelling on it now. Noir's talent replication was temporarily unavailable. He couldn't copy anything even if he wanted to. The Marines could attack at any moment. He had to wait for his system to recover and prioritize copying Shirahoshi's Poseidon ability. That little Shirahoshi is a treasure trove of abilities. Noir opened the gate to the underworld and let Isho, the mother and daughter inside. Meanwhile, the slave traders whom Isho had let go were still reeling from their near-death experience. While they were terrified of Isho's immense power, they suddenly recalled the man who had been observing the battle. That man's face seemed familiar. The lead trafficker's blood ran cold. He turned to his subordinates and yelled, "Quick, find the Marines. Devil Noir is here." Unaware that they had been recognized, Noir and his crew were on thriller bark, helping the little girl find her father. After gathering everyone, Noir let the mother and daughter search for him. Among the assembled crew, a man with dark circles under his eyes and a worried expression spotted the pair Noir had brought. Tears welled up in his eyes. He rushed forward, crying out, "My love, my daughter." The mother and daughter, stunned for a moment, then ran towards him, embracing him and sobbing his name. "He was actually on our ship." Noir scratched his head as he watched the emotional reunion. He wondered how many other families had been separated among his crew. It would take a long time to reunite them all. The man, along with his wife and daughter, knelt before Noir, overflowing with gratitude. "Thank you, Captain. Thank you for finding my family." Noir frowned. "If you want to kneel, go kneel somewhere else. Don't embarrass your family." The man quickly wiped away his tears and snot, standing up straight. "Yes, sir." Isho watched Noir with admiration. "It is commendable that you are willing to help the weak and downtrodden. But why does the world government inflict such suffering on ordinary people, taking them away as slaves?" Isho sighed, his words revealing a deep dissatisfaction with the world government. Over the years, as he wandered the world alone, he had witnessed countless acts of cruelty and injustice. Driven by his strong sense of justice, he had closed his eyes forever, unwilling to witness any more of the world's ugliness. And these unbearable atrocities, in Isho's view, were mostly committed by the self-proclaimed righteous government, not pirates. This made him question his own purpose. Where was the justice he sought? Noir smiled. From the government's perspective, they are not wrong. Most of the evil they commit is to keep their position and maintain their authority. But for the majority of the world, their good is nothing more than evil disguised in a pretty package. Isho looked at Noir in surprise, a faint smile appearing on his lips. "I thought the one who caused such chaos in Mary Joieuse would be a reckless villain. I didn't expect." Noir shrugged dismissively. "That's just useless talk." Isho looked at Noir, his eyes glinting with an unknown emotion. He hesitated before asking, "Given your perspective, should I serve the Marines and the government?" Noir was stunned. Fujitora Isho was asking for his opinion? What did this mean? Chapter 144. Noir hesitated. His words could potentially alter Isho's future. Isho, destined to become a Marine Admiral, possessed top-tier combat prowess. If he joined Noir's crew, their lack of high-level fighters would be resolved. However, rushing things might backfire and cause Isho to resent him. So, Noir decided on honesty, laying out his thoughts plainly. The Marines are a powerful organization, but ultimately, they are subordinate to the world government. Their resources, their very core, are provided by the government. Because of this, they face limitations in what they can truly accomplish. I know many Marines. Despite being their enemy due to our differing stances, I admire their unwavering convictions and their personal sense of justice. Isho pondered for a moment. So you're saying there are many honorable individuals within the Marines? Noir nodded, then added, everything has two sides. Just as there are occasionally good people among pirates, there are bound to be some bad folks in the Marines as well. Most of the corrupt Marines are found in the 4 Blues branches. There are far fewer at Marine headquarters. Isho seemed to have a revelation. He bowed his head slightly. I am enlightened by your words. Noir wasn't afraid of Isho running off to join the Marines after this conversation. In the original story, Isho only considered joining the Marines after the Marineford War, when external pirate activity surged, and his skills as an unknown master swordsman were needed. Coincidentally, after the Marineford War, a power struggle for the fleet admiral position erupted within the Marines, and the world military draft propelled Isho to a position of high authority. But now, having met Noir and heard his perspective, Isho gained an early understanding of the inner workings of the Marines. He would realize that to truly uphold his justice, he needed significant power, at least the rank of admiral. However, with the current stability within the Marines, there was no opportunity for him to rise quickly. And with Noir, a transmigrator, altering the course of history, the events of the Marineford War and the subsequent power struggle were uncertain. Based on your opinion, should I join the Marines? Isho asked, his gaze fixed on Noir. Noir coughed. I have a better suggestion. Join my pirate crew. Isho was momentarily stunned, then burst into hearty laughter. You just praised the Marines' internal atmosphere, and now you're trying to recruit me into a pirate crew? Noir shook his head. The higher-ups in the Marines may be righteous, but they are also individuals driven by power. Are you confident you can climb to that level within the Marines? Isho's laughter subsided as he considered Noir's words. At his core, Isho was a free-spirited wanderer with a strong sense of justice. He wasn't well versed in power struggles and bureaucratic maneuvering. Seeing Isho's hesitation, Noir continued. So, what kind of person do you think I am? Isho looked at Noir, his expression serious. Though you bear the title of pirate, I see a man of compassion, one who cares for his subordinates and is willing to risk his life to save slaves. A true chivalrous spirit. And as an enemy, you speak highly of the Marines without reservation. You are a man of honor. The unexpected praise made Noir blush. He coughed again. So, my pirate crew is, as I said, among the minority of pirates. The underworld pirates are mostly comprised of those who have suffered greatly, lost their families, and been enslaved. They may have committed crimes in the past, but now our only enemies are the celestial dragons. Our primary goal is to live freely and without worry. Joining my crew won't compromise your justice. In fact, it will allow you to witness a different kind of justice, one you might not have seen before. Isho hesitated for a long moment. Could you give me some time to consider your offer? Noir breathed a sigh of relief. Isho's willingness to consider the offer was a positive sign. Though Isho appeared to be a carefree wanderer, his strong convictions meant he would eventually join an organization, though which one remained unknown. Noir had done his best to persuade him. Now, it was up to fate. Unlike Enel, who could be swayed with a bit of force and some food, Isho was a different breed. Putting aside the question of whether Noir could even defeat him in combat, even if he succeeded, Isho's personality wouldn't allow him to submit easily. While Noir was attempting to recruit Isho, the situation outside the underworld river had changed drastically. Countless Marines had surrounded the shores of Sabahadi archipelago. Warships and Marines in blue uniforms stretched as far as the eye could see. Leading the charge was their old friend, Uncle Kizaru. However, Kizaru's expression was far from relaxed. He had encountered someone even older than himself. Former Marine Admiral, Black Arm, Zephyr, the mentor of the current 3 admirals. Unfortunately, Kizaru had the worst relationship with Zephyr among all his students. As one of the first students Zephyr trained after retiring from the front lines, Kizaru should have held deep respect for his former teacher. But reality was different. When Zephyr became an instructor, he had just retired from his no-kill admiral phase, still in the midst of transitioning towards his hatred for pirates after his family was murdered. Therefore, the young Akainu and Aokiji were influenced by Zephyr's ideology. Akainu developed an absolute hatred for pirates, while Aokiji adopted a more nuanced perspective, judging good and evil on a case-by-case basis. But Kizaru was different. He was the oldest of the 3 admirals and had already formed his own philosophy, often disagreeing with Zephyr's views. Combined with their differing opinions on training methods, their relationship had become increasingly strained. Zephyr, clutching his right arm, glared at Kizaru with a grim expression. "You're still clinging to your ideals." Kizaru replied with a hint of impatience. "Oh, are you going to lecture me again?" Zephyr raised his newly installed experimental arm, a Dyna stone grinder. His voice was raspy. "Never mind. I can't control you." Looking at Zephyr's aging body, Kizaru sighed, but still turned away without speaking. Vice Admiral Strawberry rushed to support Zephyr, but Zephyr pushed him aside, assuring him he was fine. Upon receiving news of Noir's activities, Sengoku hadn't dared to take any chances. He'd immediately dispatched both Kizaru and Zephyr. He had also summoned every available Vice Admiral, including the Admiral candidates, Gion, Momosagi, and Tokikaki, Chaton. Sengoku didn't believe that Noir could escape from so many powerful Marines. Zephyr's gaze swept across the coastline, his expression suddenly hardening. He pointed towards the distance. "Isn't that a pirate flag?" Kizaru followed his gaze. Two enormous sea serpents pulled a massive crimson ship. The dark red flag displayed a symbol of 9 intertwined snakes. Empress Boa Hancock? What was a warlord doing here? Chapter 145. On the deck of the Kuja pirate ship, Hancock reclined languidly on her snake Salome, her elegantly crossed legs gleaming like polished jade. She surveyed the approaching marine fleet with an air of regal indifference. The Kuja pirates brandished their weapons, their faces showing no fear in the face of the formidable marine force. From the lead marine ship, a messenger called out to the Kuja pirates, "We are on a top-secret marine mission, Warlord Hancock, stand aside immediately." Hancock's brow furrowed, her delicate chin tilted upwards in disdain. "Marines," she purred, "are you ordering me around?" The Empress didn't bother waiting for a response. She gracefully rose to her feet. Bathed in the brilliant sunlight, the captivating beauty walked to the bow of the Kuja ship. Even seasoned vice admirals felt their hearts stir, their eyes involuntarily forming heart shapes. One by one, the marine soldiers and officers souk-bed to her mesmerizing presence, their gazes fixated on her breathtaking form. A chorus of awestruck voices filled the air. So beautiful, observing the growing infatuation among the Marines, the composed Vice Admiral Gion, known as Momosagi, stood firm. Her long, shapely legs, adorned with a striking black spider tattoo, were a captivating sight in themselves. Momosagi, her face grim, called out to the entranced Marines, "Snap out of it, be wary of her ability." Though beautiful herself, Momosagi's charm paled in comparison to Hancock's. Her words alone couldn't break the spell. Even Tokikaki, better known as Chaton, who had confessed his love to Momosagi countless times, had forgotten his goddess, his voice now joining the chorus praising Hancock's beauty. Witnessing the embarrassing display from her fellow Marines, Momosagi gritted her teeth. "Damn it," she muttered under her breath. Kizaru picked at his ear, his voice nonchalant. "Empress Hancock, such captivating allure." Z, his chin resting on his hand, observed with surprising calmness. Combined with her devil fruit ability, it's a formidable power. Ooh, Momosagi looked at Kizaru and Z with admiration. As expected of the pillars of the Marines, they remained unaffected by the Empress's charm. Even she had to be careful not to look directly at Hancock. "Admiral Kizaru, Instructor Z," she asked, "how do you manage to resist her influence?" Both men fell silent, their faces taking on an odd expression. "Mostly, endurance," Momosagi faced palmed. Hancock looked down at the men with undisguised disgust. Foolish men. Simple creatures. Why were so many Marines here? Did they have new information about the pirate who had kidnapped the celestial dragons? If so, her presence here was timely. She had to uncover the truth behind this incident. Momosagi stepped forward from the throng of infatuated Marines, pointing at Hancock. "Boa Hancock, you are a warlord. Why are you obstructing Marine operations?" Hancock tucked a stray strand of raven hair behind her ear, her gaze fixed on Momosagi. "I have no intention of obstructing you. You are the ones who are blocking my ship." Momosagi gritted her teeth, remaining silent. "Damn pirate. Even a warlord acts like this." Z rose to his feet, his expression serious. "We don't have time for this. Devil Noir will escape." Hancock's eyes flickered. Devil Noir, is that his title? Z hefted his massive metal arm, the grinder, and without hesitation, punched his way through the crowd of his own men. The officers, jolted by the sudden pain, snapped out of their trance. Momonga, clutching his head, asked, "What was that about? Why did you hit us?" Z replied calmly, "Pain helps focus the mind, don't let her charm you." Hancock watched as the Marines used pain to regain their senses, a sneer playing on her lips. Petty tricks. How pathetic. Momosagi, her sense of justice unwavering, glared at Hancock, who stood between them and their objective. "Boa Hancock, do you want to be stripped of your warlord title? Step aside." Hancock's expression turned serious. If the Marines were here to apprehend Noir, she needed to buy him time. As she took a step forward, preparing to address the Marines, a massive black fog erupted from the sea between the two forces. From within the eerie mist, a ship slowly emerged, its golden hull gleaming in the sunlight. The Ark Maxim sailed out. Noir stood at the bow, casually enjoying the ocean view. But his relaxed demeanor vanished in an instant. Why are there so many Marines? The shores of Sabaody are practically overflowing. Are they holding a dumpling-eating contest or something? Robin gently touched Noir's shoulder, pointing in another direction. Noir, look. Noir followed her gaze and saw two giant snakes pulling a large ship. The ship's flag bore the distinctive 9-headed serpent skull of the Kuja pirates. That must be the Empress flag. What's she doing here? As Noir pondered this, Mahawk, who had been cooped up on the Ark Maxim, emerged, dressed in a casual checkered shirt and shorts, looking like a tourist on vacation. He'd been staying on the ship for quite some time, insisting that Noir take him to the New World. Mahawk has changed, Noir thought. He's not the same aloof swordsman anymore. Why has he become like Ace, always looking for a free ride? Unsure of Hancock's presence, Noir asked Mahawk, do the warlords have a mission here? Mahawk shook his head, sipping his juice. No, Hancock must be here on her own accord. What is she doing here? Noir's feelings towards Hancock were straightforward. Though she was undeniably beautiful and kind to those she loved, his heart belonged to Robin. Hancock was most likely here to investigate the Celestial Dragon incident. Noir wasn't delusional. He didn't think Hancock would fall for him just because he'd killed a Celestial Dragon. Since arriving in this world, he'd stopped viewing the characters from the original story as fictional. He interacted with them as real people with their own thoughts and feelings. Hancock wasn't surprised to be won by killing a Celestial Dragon. Still, the world's most beautiful woman. He couldn't deny the attraction, but he had more pressing matters to deal with right now. Both sides reacted with surprise at Noir's sudden appearance. Kizaru's expression was one of weary resignation. Every encounter with this kid was exhausting, preventing him from even enjoying a moment of peace. Z observed the rising pirate with a serious expression, while Momosagi nervously placed her hand on her sword. Chaton, along with the other Marine officers and soldiers, stared intently at Noir, ready for action. Hancock, witnessing Noir and his ship materialize out of thin air, wore an expression of shock and confusion. Her younger sister, Sandersonia, pulled out a wanted poster and showed it to Hancock. Elder sister, look. This man who just appeared. He's Devil Noir, chapter 146. Hancock took the faded bounty poster, her gaze fixed on the bewildered Noir and his crew in the distance, her thoughts unreadable. Amazon Lily, located in the Calm Belt, was isolated from much of the world's news. Consequently, Hancock's knowledge of Noir's exploits was both delayed and limited. She had recently received an intriguing piece of intelligence. Someone had kidnapped over 30 celestial dragons and even publicly executed one in Sabaody archipelago. The news had shocked Hancock. She immediately dispatched her warriors to investigate, but to no avail. The government had already begun suppressing information about the incident. All Hancock knew was that a mysterious figure had openly challenged the celestial dragons, engaging in a deadly feud. Hancock, having been enslaved by celestial dragons in her youth, harbored an intense hatred for them. But that hatred was a relic of her past. As the current empress, her duty was to protect her people. To do so, she had reluctantly accepted the title of warlord, utilizing the privileges granted by the government to safeguard her island and its inhabitants. Hancock's hatred remained buried deep within her, unable to find release. But now, with someone actively targeting the celestial dragons, she felt compelled to offer her assistance, however discreetly. As Hancock made her decision, Noir pulled out a mirror from his pocket. The Marines, arriving in such force, couldn't be here for a casual visit. He needed to prepare. The mirror connected the world of the living to the underworld river, allowing Noir to summon anything from within. Including, of course, its inhabitants. Noir raised the mirror. A brilliant light spilled out, revealing figures within its glow. Countless muscular figures emerged, their bodies taut and ready for action. Confined for days, they were finally released by their captain. The pirates roared with excitement, their cries filling the air, instantly transforming the quiet seascape into a scene of boisterous activity. The Marines, witnessing the sudden appearance of the ship and the pirates, were once again left in stunned disbelief. What kind of devilish power is this? How did he manage to conceal so many people and bring them here? Z, his face grim, watched the growing number of Marines, a surge of suppressed rage rising within him. The former Marine, whose family had been brutally murdered by pirates despite his vow never to kill one, was consumed by regret. Pirates, you're all going to die. Z leapt from the warship, charging towards the underworld pirates. His massive attack generated a powerful gust of wind as it hurtled towards the Ark Maxim. Noir's eyes widened in alarm. He flew forward, intercepting the attack. A blast of icy air erupted from his mouth, forming a thick wall of ice that rose from the sea. The devastating punch collided with the ice wall, shattering it into countless crystalline fragments as if it were made of paper. Noir drew Devil Blade, clashing with the relentless Z. The force of their hockey colliding sent shockwaves through the air, knocking back nearby Marines. The old folks in the One Piece world are something else. They only get stronger with age, turning into unstoppable killing machines. Vice Admiral Suru had almost seen through his disguise with her sharp mind. Sengoku's strategies constantly caused him trouble. Garp had nearly pummeled him to death with his fists. And now, this Z guy. Give me a break, can't you just let me win one fight? Noir attacked ferociously, but the agile old man dodged and parried every blow, occasionally landing a solid hit on Noir's head. Fighting these old-timers meant either overwhelming them with brute force for a quick victory or having the stamina to slowly wear them down. This kind of energy-intensive battle wasn't in Noir's favor. As Z quickly retreated, Noir slammed his hand onto the ground, pinning Z's shadow. The old man's backward momentum abruptly halted. Even if I can't hold him down directly, his shadow will do. Noir reversed his grip on Devil Blade, aiming to slice through Z's shadow. Before Z could react, a beam of light materialized, intercepting Devil Blade's blade. A flash of gold followed. Noir reacted just in time, raising his left arm to block Kizaru's light speed kick. The force of the impact sent him stumbling backward. Kizaru lowered his leg, his expression impassive. Z grunted, regaining his footing. The two didn't exchange a single word about their coordinated attack. Noir gritted his teeth, glaring at the familiar face. He was about to lose his mind. Why is Kizaru everywhere? He'd encountered Kizaru before, where the Admiral had thwarted his and Ace's crews. Then in Mary Joie's, Kizaru and Aokiji had teamed up to pursue him, nearly killing him. And now, the damn Admiral was here again, working with Z to capture him. Sengoku, can't you send someone else for once? If Kizaru could hear Noir's inner rant, he'd probably echo the sentiment. But Kainu and Aokiji, those lazy old dogs, were on sick leave, leaving him to deal with all the trouble. It's a long and tearful story. Noir forced a smile and greeted Kizaru. Ah, Uncle Kizaru, we meet again. Kizaru, internally groaning at having to interact with this troublemaker, replied with a weary sideways glance, can't you just stay out of trouble? Z, caught between them, looked back and forth in confusion as they exchanged greetings like old friends. How did they get so familiar with each other? And why did he suddenly feel like the third wheel? Ignoring Z, the two resumed their battle. Noir raised his sword, engaging the former admiral in a fierce clash. Kizaru, seemingly lacking his usual enthusiasm, wielded his Ama no Murakumo, supporting Z's attacks. Soon, deep cuts marred Noir's body. Blood trickled down Noir's forehead. He gritted his teeth, dodging their combined attacks while fending off other Marine officers who tried to intervene. Back, Aokiji and Kizaru had forced him to flee for his life. If Kizaru hadn't held back, giving him a chance to fight Aokiji one-on-one, Noir would have been obliterated. But the current situation seemed even worse, two admiral-level opponents, supported by a large number of well-trained Marines. The odds were stacked against him. The sheer number of vice admirals kept the underworld pirates officers occupied. Momonga had singled out Lucci, determined to bring the traitor to justice. Onigumo and Doberman, both hawks within the Marines who followed Akainu's hardline approach, were eager to settle the score with the underworld pirates, especially with Akainu injured. Enel and Wiper were locked in a fierce battle with the two enraged vice admirals, unable to break free. Even Robin and Khalifa were facing formidable opponents, Gion, the Momoshagi, and Ain, Z's student. With the two skilled swordswomen holding them back, and the underworld pirates outnumbered and outgunned, the Marines quickly gained the upper hand. Meanwhile, on the sidelines, Sandersonia anxiously asked, "Sister, what should we do?" Hancock, her statuesque figure accentuated by her form-fitting kipao, lifted her chin and spoke calmly. "Find a reason to intervene and rescue Noir. I need to have a word with him." Chapter 147. The underworld pirates were completely suppressed by the Marines, unable to mount any sort of counterattack. This wasn't due to any weakness on the underworld's part. Any single pirate crew facing the full might of the mobilized Marines would be at a disadvantage, let alone a newly formed crew like the underworld pirates. Noir gritted his teeth, struggling to withstand the combined pressure of Kizaru and Zephyr's attacks as their light sword and smasher collided with his devil blade. His resistance was futile. Even with their differences, Zephyr and Kizaru, working together, were an insurmountable force. Did my protagonist Ora take a vacation? I can't even handle two admirals, Noir muttered self-deprecatingly. Seeing Noir cornered, his crewmates were frantic. Enel desperately tried to break through the encirclement. But Vice Admiral Onigumo was no pushover. His life-returned controlled hair ensnared Enel and flung him back. Wiper caught Enel, roaring in frustration, "Use your speed, don't just charge in blindly." Enel's face darkened. "I don't need you to tell me what to do." Wiper transformed into his hybrid form, his massive wings beating, generating a fierce gust of wind that buffeted the two vice-admirals. Enel seized the opportunity and dashed forward, blue arcs of lightning tracing his path through the air. In the blink of an eye, he appeared before Noir. Kizaru watched the lightning-wielding man with surprise, then chuckled. "Enel, former god of Skypia, here to help your captain?" Without a word, Enel thrust his trident at Kizaru's face. Kizaru didn't flinch. Experienced fighters could sense the presence, or lack thereof, of Busashoku haki in an attack. As expected, the golden trident passed harmlessly through Kizaru's face. Kizaru raised his leg, laser light gathering around his shin. He delivered a swift and merciless kick. Enel was sent flying, crashing through the deck of a marine warship. Though he had begun training in haki under Noir's guidance, he was still unable to utilize it effectively in combat. Zephyr, observing Enel's swift defeat, sneered at Noir. "Your subordinates are nothing special." Noir watched impassively as Enel was struck down. A slow smile spread across his face as he raised his sword, his voice firm and resolute. "Don't underestimate my crew." Zephyr raised an eyebrow dismissively and swung his blackened arm at Noir again, Kizaru quickly joining the attack with his Ama no Murakumo sword. Noir's eyes gleamed, his smile widening, his stance unwavering. Those familiar with Noir knew that this expression meant he had a plan. Ignoring Kizaru's incoming sword strike, Noir dragged Devil Blade along the ground, then swung it upwards at Zephyr, unleashing a barrage of shadowy projectiles. Kizaru's expression darkened. Noir was ignoring him. Just as Kizaru's light sword was about to connect with Noir, a flash of blue lightning erupted, shielding Noir once more. Enel coughed up blood, another wound appearing on his already battered body. His chest bled profusely. Kizaru looked at Enel, surprised. "A man like you, taking a blow for someone else?" "TCH." Enel spat out a mouthful of blood, his voice defiant. "Less talk. You're my opponent. Leave the others out of this." Even without haki, he could still buy Noir some time. Kizaru had become Enel's second unshakable devil, the first being his ruthless captain. So, even if it cost him his life, Enel would defeat him. Kizaru sighed. "Enthusiasm is a powerful thing. Fine, fighting you is better than fighting my old teacher in Noir." With a newfound resolve, Enel faced Kizaru alone. Noir, observing the battle, smiled with satisfaction. Zephyr scoffed. "Not worried. Kizaru may be annoying, but taking down that weakling will be child's play." The force behind Noir's Devil Blade suddenly intensified, sending a tremor through Zephyr's massive frame. Noir, usually warm and friendly towards his crew, now radiated a chilling aura. His voice was cold and sharp. "Shut your mouth." Without another word, Noir charged, unleashing a torrent of blood-red conqueror's haki, even more potent than what he displayed against Garp. Zephyr coated his powerful arm in Busashoku haki, his sea stone smasher whistling through the air. Noir's devil fruit powers were unaffected by sea stone. Their duel was a clash of titans, neither giving an inch. Zephyr, though slightly weaker than Garp, was still a formidable opponent. Their battle became the most dangerous part of the war, no marine daring to approach. Elsewhere, Enel was being relentlessly pummeled by Kizaru, while Wiper struggled to hold his own against the two vice-admirals. And on the Arc Maxim, a certain observer finally decided he'd seen enough. Dracul Mahak, dressed in his usual attire, his black blade Yuru in hand, stepped onto his small coffin-shaped boat. Mahak's sharp gaze was fixed on Noir, a hint of intrigue in his eyes. After days of sparring with Noir, Mahak had gained a deeper understanding of his swordsmanship. With his talent, Noir was the most likely candidate to surpass him in the future. He couldn't allow such a promising opponent to be crushed by the Marines here. The Marines, noticing Mahak approaching the center of the battlefield, reacted with a mix of apprehension and confusion. The Shichibukai and the Marines were ostensibly allies, but the pirates' true nature couldn't be ignored. Marines like Zephyr, who harbored a deep hatred for pirates, found it difficult to cooperate with the Shichibukai. Ultimately, the Shichibukai were merely tools, a temporary measure to maintain the balance of power between the four emperors and the Marines. If either side gained a significant advantage, the Shichibukai would be the first to be affected. The Marines watched the uninvited guest warily, unsure of his intentions. Mahak raised Yuru. Emerald green slashes, imbued with incredible power, ripped through the air, aimed at various targets. Across the chaotic battlefield, numerous figures were struck. Wiper, struggling to fend off Onigumo and Doberman, felt the ground beneath them explode as a sword slash tore through the earth. Enel, barely conscious, tried to get up. Just as Kizaru was about to strike, a gust of wind generated by a sword slash swept Enel into the sea. With a few swift attacks, Yuru had shifted the tide of several battles, inflicting casualties on both the underworld pirates and the Marines. Only Noir seemed to understand Mahak's intentions, chuckling to himself. The master of Theatrix, Hawkeye, has entered the stage. While the government tacitly allowed warlords like Mihawk to associate with pirates on the battlefield, appearances had to be maintained. At least a show had to be put on for the Marines. Mihawk didn't care about the title of warlord, but it did save him a lot of trouble. So, he offered a few subtle assists, just enough to keep up appearances. Unfortunately for Enel, his crewmates were struggling to pull him out of the water after Mihawk's help. Ain, who was close to capturing Robin, glared at Mihawk. "Dracule Mihawk, what are you doing?" Mihawk, having just finished his performance, didn't even flinch. Lending the Marines a hand, he said calmly. Ain almost laughed in disbelief. "You call that helping?" she exclaimed, gesturing towards her injured comrades on the battlefield. The members of the underworld pirates shuddered. Those indiscriminate sword slashes hadn't exactly looked like they were meant to help anyone in particular. Mihawk was about to reply when his expression suddenly darkened. He ducked his head, and a pink projectile whizzed past his ear. Everyone turned to see the woman who could capture a man's soul with a single glance, standing on the deck of her ship like a regal goddess. Boa Hancock tucked a strand of black hair behind her ear, revealing her golden snake earrings. With an air of unadulterated conceit, she declared, "Your attack struck my ship." Mihawk blinked. "Did it? I thought my control was impeccable." Then it hit him. This woman was looking for a fight. And was he going to let that slide? Mihawk gripped Yuru, his own pride flaring. "And if it did, what are you going to do about it?" Hancock smirked, her slender fingers reaching up to touch her crimson lips. Pink, heart-shaped bubbles filled the air. "Slave arrow." Hancock drew back an invisible bowstring, and a volley of pink energy arrows rained down, forming a dense curtain of projectiles. Mihawk watched her calmly, his golden eyes unwavering. His black-clad form weaved through the pink arrows without a single one making contact. The nearby Marines weren't so fortunate. Many were struck, their bodies instantly turning to lifeless stone. The petrified Marines cried out in terror, trying to flee, but the arrows seemed to follow them, unerringly finding their targets. Mihawk blinked again. Why does this seem so familiar? He shrugged, deciding to use the opportunity to help Noir while engaging Hancock. Hancock, seeing the usually stoic Mihawk seemingly riled up, felt a surge of satisfaction. Fighting Mihawk while helping Noir, I'm a genius. And so, two warlords with the same hidden agenda began a mock battle. Sword slashes and blasts of Mero no Mi energy flew across the sea, hitting everything except their intended target. Marines, pirates, vice admirals, anyone was fair game for their accidental attacks. Even Noir narrowly avoided being skewered by several arrows, and Mihawk's flying slashes sent him scrambling for cover. Are these two helping or hindering us? Z, panting slightly, glared at the two warlords who were now fully engaged in their fight. But there was nothing he could do, they weren't directly opposing the Marines. Besides, several members of the underworld pirates had also been caught in the crossfire. The once clearly defined battlefield had descended into chaos thanks to these two troublemakers. Meanwhile, the fight between Noir and Z was reaching a turning point. Z, with the advantage of his seastone arm, was steadily pushing Noir back. Noir retreated, struggling to parry Z's attacks with Devil Blade. A strange smile appeared on his face. Finally, Z's overwhelming strength broke through Noir's defenses. The massive metal arm clamped around Noir's neck, lifting him high into the air before slamming him into the ground. This was the opportunity Noir had been waiting for. Z, confident in the Seastone's ability to nullify devil fruit powers, hadn't bothered coating his arm in haki. Without the protection of Busashoku haki, Noir's Amaterasu could burn anything. Black flames, like the breath of a devil, erupted from Noir's body, engulfing Z's Seastone arm. The Amaterasu spread rapidly. Sensing the abnormal heat, Z's expression darkened. He released Noir and plunged his burning arm into the water. But the black flames showed no sign of extinguishing, even in the cold seawater. They even began to evaporate the water around them. The Amaterasu grew stronger, consuming Z's entire arm. His Seastone Smasher was completely useless, locked in place by the unyielding flames. With a grimace, Z coated his left hand in Busashoku haki, gripped his burning right arm, and ripped it off. Noir stared at the now one-armed Z, a cold smile on his lips. "How does it feel, Admiral Z?" Z glared back at Noir, his one remaining arm reaching out to attack despite his injuries. Ain, who had been fighting Robin, saw her teacher's predicament. Abandoning her opponent, she rushed to Z's side and intercepted him. Z looked at his student coldly. "Get out of my way." Ain looked up at him, her voice filled with concern. "Your right arm is gone, sensei. Fighting further will only worsen your injuries. Leave the rest to Admiral Kizaru." Kizaru, who had vanished momentarily, reappeared, staring silently at the battered Z. Z turned away with a grunt. Noir, unwilling to waste any more time, called out to the two Marines. "Well, gentlemen, I'll be taking my leave now." Kizaru narrowed his eyes, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "And you think you can just leave?" Noir grinned, raising his hand and unleashing a thick black fog across the sea. He shouted to his crew. Everyone, into the underworld. His crew, upon hearing the order, abandoned their opponents and boarded their ships, sailing towards the black fog, ignoring the cannon fire raining down upon them. Noir, using his lightning speed, zipped across the battlefield, scooping up Robin and the others. Wiper transformed into his massive winged form and soared towards the black fog. Noir, standing on Wiper's back, taunted Z and Kizaru. "With this ability, you'll never catch me." If Noir had used the underworld river from the start, a veteran like Z wouldn't have fallen for it, but now. Z, and all the Marines, were frustrated and enraged by the pirates. Their understanding of the underworld river was likely limited to a simple, teleportation gate. They wouldn't have guessed it led to a separate dimension. The Marines wouldn't let Noir escape so easily. The deadline set by the government was fast approaching. As expected, upon hearing Noir's taunt, the Marines, realizing he was about to use his mass escape ability, sprang into action. After them. Don't let them get away. Noir, watching the Marines pursue them into the fog, couldn't help but smile. Once inside the underworld, they were on his turf. As he watched the Marines charge into the black fog, a strange premonition washed over Kizaru. "Don't chase them, it's a trap," he yelled, already transforming into light and flying towards the fog. Noir, observing from within, quickly withdrew the darkness, leaving Kizaru stranded outside. Kizaru stared at the now clear sea, his unease growing. A portion of the Marine force, led by Z, had vanished into the black fog. Of all the Marines, Kizaru had clashed with Noir the most. Based on his understanding of Noir, this was undoubtedly a deliberate trap. Vice Admiral Momonga hadn't followed Z and the others. As a moderate aligned with Aokiji, he was always level-headed. He looked at Kizaru hesitantly. "What should we do, Admiral? We don't know where Noir has taken Instructor Z and the others." Kizaru scratched his head, sighing. "We'll report this to the fleet admiral and let him decide." "And what about those two squabbling warlords? What's gotten into them?" "Mahawk probably came to Noir for a sword duel. But why was Boa Hancock here?" Out in the open sea, Kizaru left some men to monitor the area where the black fog had appeared, while he sent an urgent message to Sengoku at Marine headquarters. Noir had just emerged from the underworld when he was forced back in and surrounded. This time, however, true outsiders had entered the underworld. The Marines who had charged into the black fog found themselves in a strange, dark yellow sea under a perpetually overcast sky. Everything felt eerie and unsettling. Gion, having followed Z into this world, now regretted her decision. She hadn't expected the black fog to lead to another dimension. The Marines had assumed it was some kind of teleportation ability. This played right into Noir's hands. Gion anxiously surveyed her surroundings. In the distance, a massive shadow emerged, resolving itself into a ship slowly approaching. And standing on the dark yellow sea, in front of Thriller Bark, was a lone figure. "Noir's there," Gion shouted, pointing. All eyes turned towards Noir. Noir stood calmly on the surface of the sea, one hand behind his back, the other pointing towards the Marines. In Noir's world, no one could defeat him. Z stared at Noir, ready to speak, when the sea beneath their feet began to churn violently. The seemingly still waters of the underworld erupted beneath the Marine ships, tossing them into the air with tremendous force. Ships capsized. Marines lost their footing, their faces contorted in fear as they plunged into the dark yellow sea. But what happened next defied their expectations. Those who fell into the sea didn't sink, they stood firmly on the surface. Ain's voice was filled with uncertainty. "What's going on with the sea?" Z, observing the Marines' expressions, shouted, "Something's wrong with them. Don't look at the water for too long." Noir let out a cold laugh. "It's no use." He raised his hand as if conducting an orchestra, manipulating the waters of the underworld. Massive columns of water erupted, smashing against the Marine ships, sending more Marines tumbling into the sea. Noir continued to control the water, enveloping the Marines, turning them into mindless puppets. Z gritted his teeth, closed his eyes, and charged across the water towards Noir, his remaining arm outstretched. Noir watched him impassively, like a spectator watching a clown. Suddenly, the sea beneath Z's feet lost its buoyancy. He plummeted into the depths. Ain, seeing Z fall, rushed forward to save him, but no matter how hard she tried, the water repelled her like an invisible wall. Noir's face was expressionless. "It's useless. In this sea, I make the rules." Ain's eyes reddened. She raised one hand, emitting a pink glow, while her other hand drew her katana, ready to attack Noir. Noir lifted a single finger. The water beneath him erupted, forming a wall that blocked Ain's strike. Suddenly, he felt a chill behind him. Gion, her face grim, swung her katana at Noir's neck. Noir sighed. "You never learn, do I?" Without moving, Noir vanished, replaced by Ain. Ain, startled, quickly blocked Guillaume's attack and retreated. Noir raised both hands. The calm sea erupted into a monstrous tsunami. The terrifying wave engulfed the struggling Marines. Every last one of the pursuers had been rendered unconscious by the underworld. Noir, seeing they were no longer a threat, gestured with his hand, pulling the Marines out of the water. "Tie them up. We'll make the Marines pay to get them back." The underworld's waters carried the unconscious Marine officers, delivering the prisoners to the ship. Noir clenched his fist, a satisfied smirk on his face. After all this time adapting to the underworld, he could finally control the rules of this world. It was a shame that this encounter with the Marines had forced him to reveal his hand prematurely. Otherwise, he could have used this ability to take down a Yonko. Z had followed him into the underworld due to a critical intelligence failure. Now that his ability was exposed, it would be much harder to lure them in again. Noir returned. The unconscious Marine prisoners were thrown into the castle dungeon by his crew. Enel had been badly injured again. Noir was starting to get used to this. Enel was arguably the second strongest fighter in the underworld pirates. Yet, after every major battle, he was always the most injured. Enel, bandaged like a mummy, looked at Noir with a pitiful expression. Noir patted his shoulder reassuringly. "You've worked hard. Once you've recovered, pick something from the treasury as a reward." "If you're offering, I'm suddenly feeling much better." Enel's eyes lit up with electricity. Dragging his battered body, he transformed into lightning and zipped away. You promised," Enel's muffled voice echoed in the wind, leaving Noir speechless. Ignoring the idiot, Noir turned his attention to his next move. The underworld didn't have teleportation capabilities. Exiting the underworld would return him to the same spot, which was likely now surrounded by Kizaru and his men. Could he use Z as leverage against the Marines? As he pondered his options, something occurred to him. He hadn't killed his daily quota of celestial dragons yet. The sea near Sabadi archipelago, where the black fog had vanished, was now surrounded by layers of Marine ships. Kizaru, having received no word from Z, was growing suspicious. What exactly did that black fog do? If it was a teleportation, why hadn't Fleet Admiral Sengoku received any sighting reports? A sense of unease settled over Kizaru. Such a large Marine presence scattered across the globe would undoubtedly cause a stir, unless they hadn't emerged from the fog at all. A chill ran down Kizaru's spine. He was about to return to headquarters to report his suspicions to Sengoku when the mysterious black smoke erupted from the sea once more. Noir emerged from within. The devil was back. The surrounding Marines raised their flintlocks, cannons on the warships trained on Noir. Noir, ignoring the wary crowd, pulled out a mirror on his small boat. The mirror shimmered, and an obese, repulsive man was released from within. Kizaru raised an eyebrow. Another celestial dragon. Because of the celestial dragons Noir held hostage, the Marines had been hesitant to act, their hands tied. Noir held his sword to the celestial dragon's throat. The terrified noble, feeling the cold steel against his skin, frantically knelt and cried for mercy. The celestial dragons, initially arrogant, had finally realized the gravity of their situation. One by one, their brethren had met various gruesome ends at this man's hands, and he showed no signs of stopping. They now understood that they were next. This ruler of the underworld had no scruples, no hesitation to kill. Kizaru, watching the once proud celestial dragon grovel, struggled to suppress a laugh. These parasitic ass had finally met their match. Noir, using the celestial dragon as leverage, addressed Kizaru. "Here's a suggestion. Let me go." Kizaru spread his hands, feigning helplessness. "I can't make that decision." "I have a suggestion for you too. How about releasing Instructor Z and the others?" Noir chuckled and tossed another orb of light from his underworld mirror. The familiar, towering figure of Z materialized. Kizaru's face hardened as he looked at Z, his eyes vacant and unresponsive. "What did you do to him?" Noir waved dismissively. "Just rendered him unconscious." Noir reached into the mirror and pulled out the black blade, Shisui, he'd acquired from Thriller Bark. He pressed the blade against Z's throat. With two swords held against the necks of Z and the celestial dragon, Noir grinned like a villain. "How about we play a game?" A sense of foreboding washed over Kizaru. "What do you have in mind?" Noir pressed the blades deeper, his voice chilling. "Choose one to die. I'll return the other to you unharmed." Kizaru felt a cold sweat trickle down his back. He forced a casual tone. "Is there an option where both of them live?" Noir's grin widened, revealing his fangs. "There's an option where both of them die." Kizaru clutched his head, rapidly calculating his chances of rescuing both hostages. It was easy to determine whether light or a sword was faster. Even against Mihawk, the world's greatest swordsman, Kizaru was confident he could retrieve the hostages. But Noir also possessed the Pika Pika no Mi. It was a different story. Seeing Kizaru's hesitation, Noir chuckled. "Or perhaps I should make the choice for you." He applied pressure to both blades, drawing blood. The celestial dragon let out a shriek of terror. Kizaru immediately yelled, "Stop, I need to report to Fleet Admiral Sengoku." Noir paused. Report to Sengoku? That wasn't a bad idea. If Sengoku chose to save Z, he'd annoy the government. If he chose to save the Celestial Dragon, he'd disillusion Z. Noir, relishing the drama, grinned, "Go ahead, report." Kizaru had no choice but to relay the situation to Sengoku, leaving the decision to the Fleet Admiral. The news quickly reached Sengoku at Marine Headquarters, and just as quickly, it reached the Five Elders. The two parties were once again at odds. Rescue the world noble first. One of the Five Elders commanded. Celestial Dragon's lives matter. Sengoku felt a pang of disappointment for his old comrade. Is Z's life not matter? He dedicated everything to the Marines. The Elder remained unmoved. Z has lost an arm. His strength is a shadow of its former self. We cannot waste resources on him. So, they're saying Z's death wouldn't be a great loss? Sengoku's suppressed frustration finally erupted. That's bullshit, Z doesn't deserve to die. On the other end of the Den Mushi, someone seemed to restrain the elder who had spoken. A different voice said calmly, "Sengoku, calm down." Sengoku struggled to regain his composure. "My apologies. I lost my temper, but the safety of my old friend concerns me deeply." The elder's tone softened slightly. "What do you plan to do?" Sengoku, regaining his composure, began to analyze the situation with his usual strategic brilliance. "Fundamentally, we can't trust a word the devil says. A pirate offers no guarantee of any hostage's safety. Even if he releases one, he still has the lives of several other celestial dragons in his hands. Who's to say he won't continue to threaten us?" The Five Elders listened intently. "Then, what should we do?" Sengoku fell silent, various plans flashing through his mind. He had to ensure the safety of Z, the Marines, and the 30+ celestial dragons. If he only had to protect one side, it would be easy, but protecting both. "Let's offer Noir a position as a warlord of the sea," one of the elders suggested. Sengoku's eyes widened. He was about to object, but a thought struck him. His expression turned complex. "I'd like to secure the hostages first. Offer him terms, lower his guard." The elder understood Sengoku's intent. "You want to pretend to recruit Noir, rescue the hostages, and then take him down?" Sengoku gritted his teeth. "Once we have the hostages, we can act without restraint. Provided Noir agrees to the terms and releases them as promised." The elder added calmly, a point Sengoku was already aware of. "After he releases them, he'll undoubtedly try to tamper with them somehow. We'll need to be vigilant." This was their last chance. They had to succeed. The Five Elders fell silent. After a long pause, they spoke. "If this goes wrong, we could lose both Z and the Celestial Dragons, and risk turning Noir into a permanent enemy. We'll give you one chance with this plan. If anything goes wrong, you bear full responsibility." Behind his round spectacles, Sengoku's usually calm eyes flashed with a cold determination. His voice was low and menacing. "Even if it's just for a Kainu and Aokiji, I won't let the devil get away with this."